This young man is shamed by his wife's family. Chin Li was wed to a wealthy family's heiress. His own clan was wealthy, but the matriarch now despises him. She scorns him as weak, a man with no potential. This is Ming Hao. The matriarch regrets not recognizing his immense talent earlier. She wishes her daughter had been betrothed to him instead. Ming Hao, a family friend, shares her utter contempt. He even offers a fortune for him to desert Chu Qingyi, but they are blind to the truth. Chin Li is no failure. For the last decade, he has honed a secret power, a truth known only to his own clan. And today, the fated day has arrived. He has finally awakened his true might. On the very day his power manifested, Mingho hurls another insult. Chin Li seizes his hand, crushing it, proving he was no longer a man to be trifled with. You will say my name correctly. It is Chin Li. The mother-in-law was stunned by this side of him. She and his sister-in-law were utterly shocked. Ming Hao enraged, but he couldn't speak, his hand completely shattered. The matriarch was about to ignite a conflict, but then Chu Zitong's phone blared. Dire news from the family business. A great crisis had occurred. Chin Li listened intently. His wife works for the company. This could involve her. He snatches the phone, demanding answers. That singular act left Chu Zitong utterly speechless. Until this day, Chu Zitong had been prideful, wealthy, and spoiled in society. They consistently shamed Chin Li, treating him like a mere serf, their private chauffeur. But now, he was strangely self-assured and fiercely intimidating. The mother-in-law panicked, telling Ming how to resolve the situation. Apparently, police stormed the store. Ming Hao, though anxious, boasted his connections in politics would fix everything. At Sky Eagle Company, a woman was creating a disturbance, pointing at Chin Li's wife, branding her as the sole culprit. They had ruined her face, and now they would pay dearly for it. Chu Qingyun remained silent. The woman demanded 1 million in restitution, a steep price. Mingho intervened and declared loudly, "Adverse reactions are common in cosmetics, not the company's burden. You should grasp that if you possess such wisdom." But the woman retorted, "The city's own mayor is my cousin. Are you certain you wish to address me in that manner?" Mingho froze. He tucked his tail between his legs completely. He hadn't expected her to wield such authority. He began to tremble and declared this matter was no longer his concern. Then, Chin Li entered the scene and the world shifted. He told the woman, "Grant me 10 minutes, I will mend your face." Our hero's wife is the only one in the family who values him, and yet she was aghast at his bold declaration. Ming Hao still harbored his deep resentment, but Chin Li was indifferent. Chu Qing Yin informed him she was weary, imploring him not to invite more chaos. But Chin Li appeared resolute. More powerful than ever, he vowed, "I am not the man I was before." Ming Hao observed, praying this gambit would detonate in Chin Li's face. Onlookers in the store murmured, "What power could that worthless man possibly possess?" Then Chin Li proclaimed, "I can restore the lady's face, without a doubt." The woman was skeptical. She called his bluff mere empty vows. But Chin Li raised the stakes. "If I cannot succeed, I will sever my own manhood." The woman smirked, telling him not to resent her for her ruthlessness later. This was her acceptance of his wager. But his wife despised the deal. That part of him didn't belong to him alone. So he drew her near, revealing the true cause of the welts, requesting her aid to prepare the cure. She placed her faith in him, but Chin Li conceded there is no guarantee it will succeed. The woman departs for what her husband requested, as Lu begins to rage, screaming he will face immense trouble for this stunt. The protagonist challenges Lu, stating that if he can cure her, he should do so, but this only fuels his fury for being degraded by Chin Yan's worthless husband. The company owner comes back with all the items that were requested, but Chu gives a warning that should anything go awry, the Chu family will not be liable. Kinley knows that the Chu family would abandon him in this mess, especially with a matter concerning the son-in-law. But he must proceed, so he takes the materials and begins to grind the potent ingredients, unleashing his power to unseal the bottle and infuse it with qi, which brings the water to a boil. He is no longer the silent man. For now, he has a voice and the will to act. Chin Li shows a confident expression as he finishes creating the bomb, announcing that his creation is complete, and starts to present it to the girl, a triumphant smile on his face. He asks for permission to apply the salve to the blemishes, to attempt to heal them. The main issue is that the concoction has a truly grotesque appearance. The employees mock the strange appearance of the bomb, which is steaming and looks utterly revolting. Hesitant but resolute, the powerful mayor's niece pinches her nose and starts to apply the paste to her skin. However, she only dabs a small amount onto her face. Chin Li swiftly grins and applies a much larger layer, leaving the poor girl extremely repulsed. Disgusted by this sudden act, the mayor's niece begins sprinting towards the restroom as if about to be sick. Lu and the other staff continue their mockery, calling him insane, but his wife remains somewhat uncertain. needing to know if it will succeed. A sharp scream is then heard from the women's restroom where the mayor's relative was, which seizes everyone's complete attention. But she emerges with her face flawlessly clear as if by a divine miracle, and there was no trace of blemish on her face. Her skin was perfect. Those who were just belittling Qin Li, saying he would fail, are now utterly silent and cannot fathom what they are witnessing. The protagonist reveals that the issue wasn't the product, but the woman's internal body heat imbalance. It was only necessary to use anti-inflammatory and cooling methods for the welts to completely vanish. The staff members still cannot accept that someone they view as so pathetic was able to cure the terrible affliction. And his wife demands to know what occurred, how he achieved this cure. He claims he studied ancient pharmacology, and the girl he just healed asks if he can truly cure any ailment. Qin Li replies that he must first diagnose the patient. The girl reveals her uncle has a terminal illness, and that if he succeeds, she will reward him with 500,000. Qin Li agrees without a moment's hesitation, which leaves his dear wife completely astonished, proclaiming he is insane for attempting this. She says he must not go, for he is not a physician, and should not be treating the gravely ill. But with a grin, he asserts there is no reason to be concerned. But Qin's wife is still deeply worried, saying that her family will not save him if he takes a life. Seeing that even his own wife doubts his newfound abilities, he just bows his head and begins to depart from the place. His wife cries out his name one last time. Impatient, he takes a deep breath and declares that if trouble arises, he alone will face the consequences and will not bring any more shame upon the powerful Chu family. As twilight falls, they come to the hospital in Yangshang City. We see Lu Zhang, the mayor of Yangshang City, consulting a doctor. The doctor states that his father's state is quite dire, and that an operation would be incredibly dangerous. The mayor's cousin stands with Qin Li and is frightened, for her uncle is already in the ICU. Lu Chong reveals that this very morning, his father's condition worsened dramatically, and the physician said there was no more that he could do, which leaves the distraught niece absolutely horrified. She introduces Qin Li as a master of ancient Chinese medicine. Perhaps with his profound skill, he can save her dying uncle. The doubtful cousin asks if he is a legitimate doctor, and Qin Li confirms that he is still met with skepticism. Lu Chong notes how incredibly young the boy appears, and demands to see his official medical license. Qin Li admits he does not possess a license. Appalled, the cousin starts protesting, saying he would never allow an unlicensed quack near his father, leaving the niece stunned by her relative's outburst. The girl is crushed by these words and asks Qin to leave. At that instant, a nurse rushes into view, at the door screaming that the patient's vital signs are failing fast, and for them to come without a second's delay. Everyone is frozen in shock and turns toward the nurse, hearing this news with utter disbelief. They all rush inside the room, and Lu Chong is terrified of losing his father, who lies upon the gurney. He asks the doctor what is happening to his father, and the doctor says he has exhausted every option. His cousin continues to beg with Lu Chong to permit Qin Li to see the patient, claiming that perhaps he can truly help. Chong replies that he would never entrust his father's life to someone so young. The monitor shows that the patient's vital signs are weakening further. Qin Li declares, "I can save his life, but must be done now. There is no more time to be wasted." However, Chong screams at him to get out of the room. Then he asks if Mayor Lu wishes to make a wager, but Li retorts that he wants nothing and questions what he could possibly gain from a bet with a nobody like him. The bet is simple. If the patient is restored to health, he only wants a sincere apology. Otherwise, he will go to prison. Both of the cousins demand Qin leave the room, calling him a madman for speaking in such a way. Qin states he will leave, but he guarantees that they will live to regret this. As he exits the room, he sees his wife waiting in the hallway, and the very first words she speaks are about her husband's foolish actions. With an incredibly stern expression, she continues, saying he should return home and cease his embarrassing display. The alarm from the electrocardiogram machine captures Qin Li's complete and total attention. Because the patient's vitals are dropping even lower, Lu Chang cries out, "What is happening to my father?" And even the physicians cannot explain it. The doctor orders the nurse to run and fetch a defibrillator immediately. The machine indicates that Chang's father's heartbeat has now reached 0. The man's heart has stopped. The doctor says there is nothing else that can be done, with a grave look on his face. Luo Chong is in disbelief over what just happened and exclaims that his father was alive only mere moments ago. With great sadness, the doctor offers his sincere condolences. Full of regret, the mayor collapses and begins to weep. He failed to properly care for his father and didn't spend nearly enough time with him. The door bursts open with a loud bang that startles everyone present. Chin Li is resolved to bring back the patient, demanding everyone stand aside, declaring he can still be saved. He withdraws several incredibly fine needles from within his coat, recalling that a decade ago, these sacred techniques were bestowed upon him by an immortal. He begins to work on the chest of the deceased man, but Zhang cannot believe what his eyes are seeing, because the young man is radiating a tremendous power from within him to be able to wield these profound techniques. Chin Li was forced into silence for 10 years. Everything will be justified now because he can use this art to rescue a person's life, and he begins inserting multiple power-infused needles into the patient's chest. Just before placing the final, crucial needle, he thinks that 10 years of suffering were worth it. When he pierces the last needle into the patient's neck, something truly astonishing occurs. The patient starts coughing up blood, but returns from death. The entire family is overjoyed because the patient was resurrected with Chin Li's divine assistance. The protagonist feels a wave of immense relief and says he was able to save him in the nick of time. The doctor cannot fathom what he is seeing and demands to know how he accomplished that. The whole family is ecstatic to see their relative safe, and finally conscious after the ordeal of him nearly perishing. The old man tells his dear niece not to worry, and that he is sorry for making her so concerned. With a satisfied smile, Jean Li turns to exit the room, leaving the thankful family there. But he hears Luo Zhang kneeling on the ground and calling out his name. When he looks back, the mayor declares he is a man of little faith and should have put his trust in the boy earlier to save his father. Even after treating the young man so horribly, he still rescued his father. Chin Li tells the mayor not to fret. His father will be stable soon and will make a full recovery. The girl also offers a sincere apology and promises she will pay the 500,000 as agreed, just that he needs to provide his personal bank account number. As he closes the door and departs the room, he hears his wife's voice once more, speaking with a mocking edge. How wonderful, Dr. Chin. He had sensed she was waiting there, and begins to regard her with a slow, steady gaze. His wife is starting to grasp what has truly happened. She claims it was merely a lucky coincidence, and that he must not try that kind of stunt ever. Again, Chin ponders what kind of image his wife holds of it, and figures it must be a terribly poor one. Lu Chin's former pursuer is watching the scene from a corner and is deeply agitated seeing the boys' unexpected success. The pair travels back home, arriving deep in the night. Chin's mother asks about her daughter, if she is still frightened, and demands to know what transpired, while Chin Li quietly watches the two converse. Kim insists that everything is resolved now and that it is over, but her mother is taken aback to hear her speak so serenely. The mother-in-law turns upon her son-in-law and begins yelling, demanding why he is standing there and ordering him to clean the house. Chin Li, with a scornful tone, replies, as you wish. Chin Li goes back to his room after completing all the household duties and is amazed by the sight he beholds when he enters. His wife is clad only in a delicate nightgown, performing some stretches she saw on TV while walking. Chin Li can discern that she is doing some yoga routines. While extending her limbs, his wife begins, saying that she learned from her dear sister that he acted like a complete degenerate today. He clarifies that after retrieving the girl from her college, he was disrobing in his own room, and she mistakenly opened the door and saw him. He turns to gaze at his wife, who is in a very sheer nightgown, and continues her stretches, mastering her breath, and she questions if that was the full extent of what happened. During the stretch, she must press firmly on her chest region. This makes Chin Li quite intrigued by the manner in which she is stretched. Chin Yin carries on, saying that she understands her sister's nature and doesn't think that her own husband would do anything to provoke her. She also requests him not to be so reckless and that he was fortunate everything went well today. To finish, she adds that tomorrow they have an important family meeting with her kin that they both must attend. Dining with his wife's entire family is not a very welcome prospect for Chin Li, but he simply agrees. His wife is now drained and finally collapses onto the bed to recover. Her voice suddenly begins to sound like silk, as if whispered from inside a flower. She softly thanks her husband for his deeds on this day. He can scarcely believe the words he is hearing, because it's one of the rare times Chin Yin has ever said thank you to him. At the break of dawn, we see the grand exterior of a lavish building named the Royal Hotel. Inside the opulent hotel, there is a grand restaurant where Chin Yan's entire clan is beginning to arrive and greet one another. Chin Yan's father is overjoyed to welcome all of the Q family to their first grand annual gathering. His wife's aunt is adorned in a very expensive gown, and he knows that this woman will undoubtedly try to demean it. Her name is the formidable Chubi Qian, and she is Chin Li's father-in-law's elder sister. This aunt inquires when Chin Yan will bear a child. While delicately sipping her glass of wine, Chin Yan says they are not prepared, so they will not be hasty in having a child. The aunt says it's wise to have a child soon, while she is still young. And Chin Li does not stop feasting on the banquet's many delicacies. She then continues, stating that she herself has no such worries to consider, because her son-in-law, unlike some other people, does not require his wife to provide for him. Mrs. Chu, with a proud smile on her face, proclaims that her son-in-law is no ordinary man. She is very pleased because he holds a post in the government, unlike some other individuals. But all the while, Chin Li continues to consume the feast before him. The aunt gives a nearly imperceptible cough, a signal for her son-in-law, Chung, when to take notice. Chung then rises, giving thanks for attending the first family feast, and that he bears a special gift for the uncle, presenting him with an exquisite crimson box. Chinian's father is absolutely awestruck to see the contents of the box. His eyes widen with pure admiration as he receives a porcelain treasure, while appreciating the magnificent porcelain artifact. Chung claims he acquired this treasure for 300,000, and it hails from the ancient Yuan dynasty. 300,000 is an extremely large sum, but this particular ceramic piece is immensely valuable. At this moment, the feeling within the room seems far heavier after the ceramic is brought forth. Chin Li can sense a sinister aura radiating from it. It seems this artifact is saturated with a vile energy, and maybe it even carries a terrifying curse. His in-laws are still stunned by their gift, remarking that Chung is exceedingly generous to present such a priceless treasure as a gift. But Chin Li can only perceive the malignant energy that pours from the ceramic bowl. Chung begins to taunt Chin Li directly, stating that he must have also prepared a magnificent gift, but then immediately scoffs at him, saying that he has no job and relies upon his wife. So, having no fortune, he will bring nothing. But if he desires, he can be offered a waste collector's post at the city hall, leaving his wife flustered by these cruel comments and insisting that he cannot speak that way to her husband. Chung continues his mockery of Chin Li, who rises and states that he was in a rush and couldn't bring a gift. Chung is astonished to realize that Chin Li is able to speak, and Chung's wife sneers that even with a voice, he is still a failure who can accomplish nothing. Chin Li then cleverly retorts that it doesn't matter what he could have brought. It would be infinitely more precious than something counterfeit. Everyone grows tense at this accusation, and the aunt begins to curse. But Chung insists he spent 300,000 on the artifact. Chin Li says it is irrelevant how much he spent. The piece is, without a doubt, a fake. Chung becomes enraged, calling Chin Li a loser for claiming his gift is a forgery, and smashes the table so hard he topples his glass. He wonders how Chin could have known it was a counterfeit, since he was guaranteed that the bowl was authentic, and that no one would be able to discern its true nature. Chin Li feels challenged and will now demonstrate why it is a fake. The father-in-law commands Chin Li to hold his tongue, and his wife says he cannot be so disrespectful since everyone is family. The aunt continues to prod, saying that he has made baseless accusations, and the boy asks if the cousin will finally admit that the ceramic is nothing more than a replica. His wife states it is irrelevant if it's fake or not. It is a token of appreciation, and today is for family dinner, and they should not be in conflict. The sound of the door opening captures the whole room's attention, and the mayor himself strides into the room, asking what is a forgery here. With him is one Feng Mao. Chung is shocked that the mayor is present and starts to move toward it. He offers his hand toward the mayor as a greeting, and the mayor also lifts his hand as if to greet Chung. But Mayor Liu walks right past him and greets Chin Li, extremely happy and thankful to see him there, also saying he had not expected to find him here. Chung scoffs that Chin Li is just a mute and should be treated like garbage. Hearing this, the mayor becomes furious and demands to know who said that. The man responds that his name is Chung, chief secretary of the entire city hall. He quietly turns and asks if Chin has any issues with Chung, and Chin says no. They were merely debating the authenticity of the porcelain, intrigued by the ancient artifact before him. The mayor summons the man who accompanied him to inspect it. The man says he has not performed many appraisals lately, but blue and white ceramics are his area of expertise, and he begins to inspect the item with great care. He brings the bowl close to his face and confirms that the patterns and hues appear to be from the Yuan. Shuren asks if the appraiser believes it is a true original or simply a copy, since the appraiser had declared the piece from the Yuan dynasty. He is curious if the boy is questioning his judgment, believing it is fake. Jean asks if it truly is not a fake, and the appraiser chuckles and claps the boy on the shoulder, stating he now understands why the mayor holds him in such high regard. He reveals that the bowl is, in fact, a counterfeit, that when viewed from afar, it resembles an original piece, and notes the craftsmanship is very refined, but it lacks the grace and artistry of the genuine article. He adds that the piece was buried with a deceased person, and soaked up a great deal of dark energy in the person's tomb. So the appraiser declares the bowl is cursed on top of it all. Chin Li's mother-in-law grows frantic, and commands her husband to cleanse his hands, while the aunt berates Chungwon, who apologizes, claiming his ignorance. The appraiser says that the replication is quite good, very masterfully done, but a keen eye can see it and invites Chin for tea. The mayor says that Chin is a guest of great honor, and that he was just planning to speak with him about a matter. So the boy tells his wife's relatives to continue their meal, and he will come back once he concludes his meeting with the mayor. The spiteful aunt remarks that the boy is a truly good match, and the mother-in-law is beaming because she chose not to say a word to save her own face. Chin continues speaking with the mayor, who reveals that his father, after coming home, fell ill. Again, in recent months, his wife and son also grew sick. And hearing this, Chin Li channels all of his power and asks to examine the mayor's pulse. The mayor offers his hand to Chin, and, as he suspected, there is a dark, corrupted energy that is purged by Chin's chi from the mayor's pulse, and he asks what it is that he is sensing. But Chin tells him not to worry, that he knows precisely what must be done. After the grand dinner, he will visit the mayor's home to solve this problem for good. The mayor is elated to hear this and says he will welcome and await him at his home. Later that day, after the meeting has concluded, Chin is assisting his father-in-law to get into the car. He instructs his wife and sister-in-law to go on with his father-in-law, but he has to go out. And hearing this, his wife replies rather harshly. After all of them have departed in the car, Chin takes out his phone and starts to plan a route on his GPS. He seeks for the path to reach the mayor's residence, which is close to his location. He walks onward and turns right onto a very crowded street, while the GPS displays a path down a dark alley that Chin must take to get to his destination. The GPS voice announces that there are only 50 meters remaining to reach his destination at this alley's end. However, midway, Lu is standing there with several armed goons awaiting Chin. The young man continues to look down the alley, then at Lu and the numerous thugs standing behind him, all waiting for his arrival. Chin lies being barred from passage through the alley, as it is filled with Lu Minghao's armed men. The former admirer of his wife, Chin Yen, Lu, declares that the only escape for Chin is to allow them to sever both his hands. With a mocking tone, and so relaxed that he cleans his own ear, Chin sees the man with his malicious grin and a vile look that responds that Chin shouldn't be concerned about a thing, because now they will handle everything. To spur them on, Lu bellows that he will give 50,000 to whoever severs Chin's hands. After this bellowing shout, all the armed thugs charge towards Chin to assault him. With a confident smirk on his face, an aura of immense power starts to envelop the young man. He gathers all of his chi to unleash incredibly powerful strikes, beginning by kicking one of the assassins directly in front of him. With just a single blow, he fells one. Then he turns to another, and with a devastating punch to the gut, he takes it down as well. The blows are incredibly strong and swift, and he continues to strike the thugs. And with every single blow, one of them falls. After some time, Chin is not even winded and asks, "Is that all?" Leo, how? With a broken look upon his face, cannot believe what he is witnessing. With a look of pure terror, he struggles to grasp how someone treated like filth could suddenly become so powerful out of nowhere. Chin then makes a taunting gesture toward Lu, beckoning him to come closer as if to fight. But Lu's intentions are quite different, and he begins to flee for his life, telling Chin not to approach him, relieved that the ordeal is over. Chin can finally take a calm breath. He continues his journey to the mayor's mansion, which is in the same direction as the alley where Lu Minghao's thugs were ambushing him. All the thugs are left vanquished and unconscious on the alley floor. As the day draws to a close, hues of the sunset begin to paint the sky. Just up ahead is the mayor's residence, and Chin is nearing a large, an imposing mansion. At last, he has located the house, and is certain it is the correct one. The young man rings the bell, waiting for someone to answer it. He can already perceive that there are very foul energies emanating from inside that place. And when the mayor opens the door, though appearing glad, there are deep, dark shadows beneath his eyes. The mayor ushers him in, but Chin can see that the home's energy is deeply corrupted. The entire atmosphere is crawling with this sinister energy. It seems far worse than Chin imagined. Suddenly, a piercing scream is heard from somewhere deep inside. The two men rush down the long corridor. The mayor throws open the door, concerned for his wife, and asks if his son Xiao Ji's condition has worsened again. While the mayor comforts his wife, Chin can see that the boy Xiao Ji is levitating, and the woman is completely paralyzed with fear. Chin is also staggered by what he sees. His eyes are locked entirely on that malevolent energy. The boy is indeed levitating in the air, surrounded by a dark power that seems to take the form of a face, and makes a sound like a rattling serpent. The mayor is horrified, but Chin promises him that he will save the boy. But the energy is so immense that it even has a physical body. The monster, sensing Chin's formidable power, starts to become extremely agitated, and its eye blazes with pure fury. interfere, and to keep his distance. It echoes the same words, a chilling and unholy chant. Chin focuses his power, poised to finally strike back. With a swift motion, he launches several acupuncture needles at the boy, all infused with chi. The needles do not strike the boy. They target the very heart of the malevolent presence, which erupts in a white flash upon impact and begins to dissolve. The mayor and his wife fear for their precious son, who collapses onto the bed, utterly drained. But Chin-Li warns them back. Stay away. The battle is not yet won. The vile energy remains within the child's body, and he must expel it to complete the cleansing. The mayor and his wife suddenly become agitated. Tainted by the aura, they begin hurling curses at one another, and the wife screams that Chin-Li is worthless, while the mayor roars for everyone to be silent. Seeing they're also being corrupted by the energy, Chin makes a tiny incision on his own thumb. He channels all of his immense power and places a single needle upon the boy's forehead. He lets out a scream as a black miasma begins to rise into the air, taking on a truly bizarre shape. We can now see that it is pure, dark energy. Kinley's life force is surging through the boy's form, and he starts to levitate once more from the clash of two energies. One is entering his body and purifying, while the other is being forced out, which is the foul energy pouring out in vast quantities from the boy as it begins to gather high above the room. Chin-Li infuses 3 needles with his own power and hurls them at the dark mass to obliterate it. The boy slowly starts to awaken and immediately calls for his mother, who embraces him in a tight hug. Shanlai assures the mayor that he has no more need to worry, that now he only needs to locate the source of this sinister energy. The mayor does not fully comprehend what this aura is. The young hero starts to search the entire room, asking if anything unusual happened recently with the family, or if they have been given any strange gifts. Seeing that nothing in the room radiates this dark energy, it must be located somewhere outside the house. He begins to walk toward the front of the mansion, and the mayor follows close behind him. Upon arriving at the main entrance, he can see that hidden inside a statue, there's a small rock charged with a sinister power. He plucks the cursed stone from the statue and reveals it to the mayor, stating that this is the origin of all their troubles. The mayor cannot believe that a tiny stone could affect him in such a way. Shinlai clarifies that the corrupting aura of the stone would always make contact with him whenever he entered and exited the house. The more he was exposed to this malignant energy, the more corrupted his own body would become, becoming enraged and physically weak. To resolve this matter and end the curse, Chin-Li focuses his chi, shattering the cursed stone, purging all the malevolent energy from that place. The mayor's wife thanks Chin-Li for saving her child and deeply apologizes for the things she said when insulting him. Chin-Li holds no grudge and only wants the child to be safe. The mayor is truly overjoyed and says he will have the driver take him home. But before he leaves, he asks if Chin-Li would consider opening a clinic, startling him with this unexpected proposition. He begins to ponder what it would be like to run a medical clinic, and the mayor states he wishes to repay the great favor, since Chin rescued multiple members of his own family. Chin-Li thanks the mayor and starts walking towards the car, very pleased with the idea the mayor has just presented. During the journey to his home, night begins to fall, and Chin considers that with a clinic, he could help a great many more people. If his own parents could witness what he is now doing, they would undoubtedly be incredibly proud of him. As they journey through the glowing city, Chin-Li observes the passing streetlights, and a sight seizes his full attention. So much so that he yells for the driver to halt the car. The command is incredibly abrupt, and the driver slams on the brakes, causing Chin to hit his head on the front seat. A little bit annoyed, the driver demands to know if they've arrived at their stop. Chin turns his head and sees his own wife, but fails to understand what she is doing there at this late hour. He conceals himself, watching what she is up to, which piques the driver's own curiosity. You can see that the young man is staring at a girl, and comments that she is quite attractive. We see another woman in high-heeled shoes, walking while wearing a form-fitting leather outfit that draws the gaze of several onlookers. This person is Chin Yan's closest friend, and perhaps the young man is overreacting, believing that she could be involved in something sinister. Chin Yan and her companion finally meet up, and the red-haired woman apologizes for her tardiness. As they draw near, the two share a passionate, shocking kiss. After this kiss, Chin-Li is deeply flustered, but the red-haired woman, Wai Mai, is not. Chin-Li is dumbfounded by what has transpired, and the driver is completely taken aback. He cannot comprehend the current situation. Is his own wife betraying him with another woman? With the bright lights illuminating, the girls are seen walking toward a nearby nightclub. The driver, with a grin on his face, says the young man has a good eye, but Chin-Li insists that is not what he is implying. He can see that his wife's female friend makes a very peculiar gesture over Chin Yan's shoulder as they step inside the establishment. There are many different kinds of music, dancing, and some beverages. As soon as Wei enters, she requests her preferred wine and says she missed Chin Yin deeply, while the mixologist prepares a few drinks. They take a seat at the bar. Chin Yin says she has many issues at work, which is the reason she could not see her friend. Her friend tells her to not dwell on negative thoughts now, and that they should simply enjoy themselves. They decide to become intoxicated and have fun with each other, toasting their initial glass with massive smiles on both their faces. After a considerable amount of time, multiple bottles have been emptied, and they continue drinking. The girl tells her friend that if she didn't need a fake marriage, she wouldn't be under so much duress. And Chin Yin already appears to be inebriated. Her friend feels pity for what is happening and gives her a specially prepared drink. Chin Yin consumes the entire drink without question, but her companion does not drink. The other woman simply observes her. The moment she finishes the last drop, she loses consciousness, and her friend drapes her over her shoulders. The two stand up and begin walking towards the staircase. They ascend the stairs with great effort to the second level of the building. When they arrive, they're met by none other than Lu Minghao, who still maintains his obsession with Chin Yin. Lu is waiting in a very spacious room. He takes the unconscious girl and carries her toward a red bed, with a video camera aimed directly at it, while her supposed friend watches it all unfold. He places Chin Yin on the bed with a vile look and sneers. "I cannot be blamed for what I am about to do." Meanwhile, the other woman exits the room and Lu bolts the door. Since Chin Yin is completely unconscious, she remains limp on the bed as Lu begins to touch her clothing, and her body. A faint rustle is heard from the room's back as Lu positions himself over Chin Yin. But suddenly, 3 knocks are heard at the door. This startles Lu completely, and he nervously calls out, asking who is at his door. The person outside replies that it is only room service. Lu assumes it might be a drink the girl with Chin Yin had ordered, but when he unbolts the door, he sees a figure that bursts inside and startles him. It is Chin Li, who stands in the doorway confronting Lu, who cannot believe he's actually there, while the other girl is already knocked out cold. In front of the door, Lu begins to make weak excuses, claiming that Chin Yin was drunk and that he was about to help her. But before he is able to finish his explanation, Chin Li drives his knee into him with incredible force, slamming him hard against the far wall. The impact is so great that Lu feels a searing pain in his chest, and he even starts to cough up blood. Chin closes in on him, and in a truly menacing voice, he asks, "How do you wish to die?" Lu starts pleading for his life, kneeling down before Chin, vowing he will never interfere in their lives again. He begs for mercy and even calls Chin his master, who is merciful and tells him he can stand up and then disappear. While offering his thanks, the criminal passes behind Chin with a fake smile plastered on his face. But something is terribly wrong. In a shocking twist, Lu snarls that Chin should go to hell and brandishes a knife, attempting to stab the young hero in the back. But he evades the attack and says he has already given Lu 2 chances, and there will not be a third. Chin takes a needle, infusing it with his chi, and makes a very precise strike in Lu's pelvic region, exactly where it would be like shattering 2 eggs. Chin scolds his foe because he brought this fate upon himself. Lu collapses to the floor, writhing and foaming in agony. Both of those who conspired against Chin Yin are ejected from the room. Chin secures the door and says he is relieved to have located his wife. In time, with a concerned look, he begins to charge a needle and sits down beside his wife. Chin makes a tiny prick on his wife's own wrist and begins transferring his own life energy into her. Chin Yan's eyes begin to flutter open very slowly. Her husband asks if she is conscious and how she feels. The girl starts to form a response, but sees that someone had been messing with her clothes and a strange place where she is. She becomes agitated again and slaps Chin Li hard, calling him a depraved and wretched bastard. In disbelief at this, the young man says he just rescued her. So why in the world did she strike him? But Chin Yin refuses to believe she was being saved. She believes he was doing something wrong. The girl has no trust in him at all and calls him a pervert. Chin Li has no further words to say. He simply gets to his feet, defeated, and says it is her choice whether she believes him or not. As he is closing the door, she continues to curse at him and hurl various objects at the door. Chin Yin feels terrible about the entire situation and begins to scan her surroundings in the room. Then the blinking light of the camera grabs her attention. She quickly notices there's a camera on a tripod that has been recording this whole time. Chin Li retreats to a park near a dense forest and gets a call on his cellular phone. The person on the line wants to know if the phone is Chin Li's. Chin Li identifies the voice as being Li Wan, the girl whose blemish is Chin Li's mother's remedy cured, and he asks for the reason she is calling. The girl responds that she wants to purchase a large order of the balm, and that, if he could enhance it by adding an ingredient to lighten skin, it would be even more beneficial. Shin Lee is very enthused by the idea of being able to sell and wants to know how many jars she needs so he can prepare them all. Lee Won says she requires around 200 jars and will wire a very large sum of money. The young man says he can do it without any issue, but that it is not as costly as she may think. The girl says she learned from her dear cousin that they established a medical clinic, and she will become a sponsor for this clinic. Shin Lee is incredibly happy and feels deep gratitude at the esteemed Accenture family residence. The clock strikes 1 o'clock in the morning, and Shin Yin is on edge because she is waiting for her husband to come home. She feels it strange for him not to be back so late. Her husband must be incredibly angry because she completely misunderstood the situation. But she hears the front door start to open. They meet in the living room and stand in silence for a long minute. He starts to head toward his own room, and she asks why he is so late. Her sudden concern catches him by surprise. Hesitating before he gives his answer, he claims he had some work to finish, and she quickly says, "Just forget about it and act as if I didn't ask you anything." Shin Lee can see that she is very on edge and looks at her, waiting for her to finally say something. Shin Yin begins to speak about what occurred today and what she did. He asks what went so wrong for her to need to drink so much. Very sadly, Shin Yin says that her company will likely fire her. Shin Yin starts to explain the problem and states she will be terminated due to the incident involving Lee Won, and her co-workers often gossip about it with everyone. One of the supervisors has had multiple meetings with her, and in one of them said she ought to simply resign. Shin Lee tries to give her some comfort, saying that even if she does get terminated, everything is going to be all right. But Shin Yin cannot see how everything could be all right. Without a career, how could she support a family? After all, it is not simple to secure a job. As he walks to take a seat, Shin Lee tries to explain what he was trying to say and asks if she can recall how he saved the mayor's father. Back at the hospital, to show his immense gratitude, the mayor offered him his own clinic, and he had already earned some funds by healing people. And if she is agreeable, the two of them can manage the clinic together. He says this while sipping a cup of hot tea. Shin Yin is stunned to hear this proposal. And by the way, her husband is now supporting her. The young man then continues, saying that it will still be some time before the clinic can open, and he is now going to bed and starts ascending the stairs that lead to his room. Shin Yin is grateful for his reassuring words, and to be truthful, she also wished to apologize to her husband. The following morning, the Chu residence doorbell is ringing nonstop, and a voice can be heard shouting for Shin Yin very loudly. A girl is standing in front of the house, yelling for someone to open the door. Shin Lee is still incredibly weary from the previous night, and has not even changed out of his pajamas. From the voice, he already knows who is on the other side of the door. He opens up the door, knowing who it must be on the other side, and sees a girl there, a young lady with short hair and dark sunglasses, who is amazed to see Shin Lee standing there. Her name is Tan Zijian, and she is Shin Yin's closest friend. Shin Yin and Shin Lee had met back in college, and they both knew Zijian from that period. Zijian still cannot fathom how Shin Yin married a man such as him. Shin recalls his days in college, when she would often play cruel tricks on him, like the time she placed itching powder in his shorts, and when he wore those shorts inside his dorm. The poor young man began to have an uncontrollable itch. Zijian calls for Shin Yin to come downstairs immediately because they want to go out shopping. They travel towards the central district. The day is truly beautiful, with the sun reflecting on the water and birds soaring. Zijian is extremely excited, singing from inside the car. Inside the vehicle are Shin Lee, Shin Yin, and of course Zijian. The friend says they're going to a surprise location shortly. They finally arrive at their destination. They park the car in front of a very opulent building, the tallest skyscraper in the entire city. Zijian reveals there will be a grand auction there, where only the wealthy and influential people are invited. In front of the lavish place, Zijian presents an invitation to enter and says that the driver, Shin Lee, is also accompanying them. They all ascend to the building's very rooftop, which is well over 90 floors. It is truly the tallest structure in the city. Zijian says the most thrilling part is the gemstone auction. You either double your fortune or lose all. This incredibly luxurious hall is where the auction is held, with a very sophisticated atmosphere, and a variety of drinks are being served by beautiful waitresses. As they make their way to the auction area, the friend teases Shin Lee to purchase a gemstone for his wife. The young man replies that if she fancies one, he will gladly buy it. The next item to be sold is a raw jade stone. The two girls are extremely excited by what has happened, but Shin Lee is feeling a bit bored. Something then seizes his full attention. From a distance, he can see that in the reject pile, there's a strange stone charged with raw energy, radiating a very powerful aura. When he moves in closer, he realizes that the energy resonates with the power inside his body, and he makes a move to take the mysterious stone. The auctioneer's announcements continue. 100,000 going once, 100,000 going twice, and the price keeps changing as the bidding continues to climb. Xinyan learns from her friend that if she desires any stone, her husband will purchase it. Tan Zijing says that if he's bluffing about this, she will handle him herself. But her friend asks her to be calm and asks where Qin Li is, because she saw he was no longer standing beside them. Qin Li wants to acquire the stone that is charged with qi, and he asks what its price is. The girl replies that it is about $50 to $100 for each stone. He starts to rummage through his pockets and finds several crumpled bills and a handful of coins. He gives the girl multiple wrinkled $10 and $2 bills and some loose change to make up the correct total amount. He then asks for assistance to cut open the stone. Zijian is in disbelief to see that. He wants to get the absolute cheapest stones and says they have no value. She then adds that if he truly cared, he would buy her a real precious stone. And that is why the clinic story might also just be a lie. While she's spouting these insults, the girl who went to cut the stone for Qin Li is utterly amazed and shouts, announcing that the stone is filled with jade on the inside. Despite its rough exterior appearance, it is incredibly valuable on the inside. But she speaks with such volume that she captures the attention of the entire auction hall. Everyone turns their heads to see the precious stone. The people there start to form a crowd around it to see, admiring the stone and taking photographs of it, excited by the prospect of finding more of them. Everyone starts grabbing the stones that were meant for the trash. Meanwhile, people want to purchase Qin Li's stone. A girl offers $300,000, but a man offers $500,000. Then, someone offers to buy the stone for a staggering $5 million. A man wearing glasses starts saying that the stone is worth, at minimum, $5 million, that he is the Jade King of Yinan City, known to all as the Great Tan Lao. With immense enthusiasm, Lao asks if the young man would sell the stone for $5 million. This man is the father of Zijian, Qin Li's old friend. Qin states that he bought the stone as a gift for his wife, and that they should ask her if she would be willing to sell it. Her friend is also completely amazed by the value of this stone. Qin Yin admires her husband's kind gesture, and thinks a little bit more about their current situation. She says that a true specialist would know best how to value a stone, and it is a great honor to meet her dear friend's father. Tan Lao is happy to acquire the precious stone, and says he will have his secretary send over a check later on. He also asks Qin Li to inspect the stone he recently bought. That seemed very beautiful and full of precious jade. The young man states that, regrettably, this stone is just a common rock and has nothing special inside. No one is able to believe him, not even his own wife, questioning how such a statement can be made, since it was a stone chosen by someone with vast experience. Tan Lao says that, although there are some jade pieces embedded in the crust, you must look inside the stone to be certain. Zian starts to provoke Qin Li again, saying that he had beginner's luck the first time. The stone is cut open, and it can be seen that there is no jade inside, so it holds no value. Zijian says that her father was never mistaken, but the Jade King remains calm and says that Qin Li was correct, and that they're always seeking people with a great deal of skill in the field of jade. If he is interested, he just needs to give him a call. Qin Li starts to speak, but Tan interrupts and says he does not need a response right now and can make his decision later. The father and daughter start to depart, and Zijian asks if her father is truly sure about this. He replies, of course, with absolute certainty. After a short while on the road, Qin Li and his wife are heading back home by car. Qin Yin is still in a state of disbelief, asking since when he has understood geology. The man hands her the check for the sale and then says, "It's not that hard. I learned from books and can teach you later." The girl snatches the check from his hand and strikes him, demanding to know why he lied, why he acted mute and like a failure. Qin Li begins to think about his true answer, thinking back to a time in the distant past. An image of an old man scratching his long beard appears. This ancient man stands up and prepares to say something. The old man has such a powerful energy that it appears to blaze with a blue aura all around. He speaks the words that follow, that as long as the lessons of the book are practiced, the boy will be 10 years ahead of his own time, but he will have to block all his senses for 10 years. This is the boy's ultimate destiny, and the rest is up to him. After saying these words, the man begins to fade away and says they will meet again in the far future. This entire story is being recounted by Qin Li, who insists he is not lying and is not a fool. Qin Yin doesn't fully understand and asks why he chose to marry her. The young man asks if she does not recall what occurred in the past. During college, some of their peers used to make fun of Qin Li, putting cigarette butts in his meal and throwing soup in his face. With a lightning-fast slap, someone, stops the cigarette but from being dropped into Chin Li's plate. The young man is then defended by none other than Chin Yen, who proclaims that people should not be messing with the weaker ones. She can now remember that story. And when they met, this action made Chin Li fall in love with her. When she proposed marriage to him after their university, he was incredibly happy. But now he is sad to recall that their marriage is only a facade. The wife asks if he never had any resentment or regret about her. Confidently, he replies, "How could I have ever regretted anything, since her own family aided him when he truly needed it?" The woman also helped him a great deal. In his own heart, he always viewed her as his wife. His cheeks begin to turn red because opening his heart was not easy. Jinyan feels good, but does not know how to react to it, since her husband has changed so much in recent days. Despite liking one another a great deal, they cannot confess their true feelings for each other. Chin Li continues, saying that his clinic should be open tomorrow, and that his own wife should come along with him. She says she assumed it was all just a joke, but it now appears to be serious. But saving human lives is not as easy a task as he believes. He says he is not treating any grave illnesses, just some more frequent issues, and she should not worry. Very angrily, Chin Yen says that if he goes to jail, no one is going to prison in his place. Her husband is very saddened by her response and his wife's mistrust. The silence between them bothers her. But she only said it because she was worried for his well-being. In a very beautiful shopping plaza is where the clinic's grand opening happens. Many people assemble in front of the new clinic, wishing good fortune, and with some celebratory balloons. Some people begin to see what services they provide, and Chin Li's wife's entire family, who was at the dinner, is also present at the open. One of the aunts begins to speak ill of the young man, saying she was not aware he had become a doctor. The man standing beside her concurs, stating the clinic opened up out of the blue. Chin Li's father-in-law says there should be no reason for concern, because his son-in-law is a man of many hidden secrets, and he even aided the mayor not long ago. Shenwen begins to say that Chin Li shouldn't feel so secure, just because he has befriended the powerful mayor, and how audacious he is to open a clinic like this and tell lies. He responds with pure sarcasm. He does not see how a clinic could be a danger to the people. The cousin's husband keeps on saying that the establishment will face a rigorous official inspection because he is employed at the city hall. Finally, Mayor Liu and his wife arrive at the location and are very glad to see Chin Li. Chin Yan's own uncles are very surprised to see that the mayor holds so much affection for the young man. Shenwen still cannot believe it, because the mayor is his direct boss. And looking at the way the mayor interacts with Chin Li, he can't grasp the relationship between the two. Chin Li accepts some gifts from the mayor and his wife. Then she adds that the new place looks quite beautiful. Chin Yan is incredibly furious, because her entire family was speaking sarcastically about her husband. And now that the mayor has shown up, every one of them has fallen completely silent outside. We can hear some desperate cries for help. A person is begging for their child to be saved, and everyone is curious to know what is occurring and why they're screaming so loudly outside. Outside, you can see a distraught father with a young boy, while the people nearby try to figure out what is wrong. Lee tells the crowd of people to move away, because he is a doctor and can help the young boy. He starts to get closer to the poor boy, who is drooling profusely. The boy is foaming at the mouth and coughing, and begging his father for some help. Some of Chin's relatives say to take the person to the hospital, claiming he won't be able to cure the boy because he has a very serious illness. The wicked aunt and her brother-in-law can only hope for a more terrible outcome, saying they wish to see how Lee will escape this situation. The father desperately implores Chin for his help, and the doctor begins to check if the boy has any reaction and requests to take him inside of the clinic. Inside, everyone observes Chin Li's work with great focus, placing the boy on a stretcher to attempt to cure him. Sitting right beside the young boy, the young man starts to concentrate all of his powerful energy and touches the boy's wrist to begin the transfer. The energy sinks deep inside the boy's small body, passing through all of his blood until it reaches his vital organs, and the boy's stomach is incredibly damaged. The young man states the boy has been poisoned and demands to know what the father has been giving him lately. The father claims it is impossible for him to be poisoned, that his kind neighbor looks after his child, and that he has always been very good to him. Chin Li's own mother-in-law starts yelling, saying the father is completely incompetent and should not leave his children with the neighbors. This causes the sick boy's father to break down and begin to cry, saying his wife passed away very early, and he has been saving money for his son's school. But the doctor can feel that from the symptoms, the weak breathing, and the boy's skin turning a dark color. It is certainly a case of poisoning. A voice in the crowd stirs up all of the onlookers, saying the doctor of this clinic got his license only a few days ago, and how dare he open a real clinic. Everyone is in disbelief to learn that he got the diploma recently, and wonders if this entire thing could just be a setup. People around start demanding that the clinic be shut down, and that the boy be taken to the hospital. His wicked aunt and cousin are enjoying this, watching the boy and the doctor struggle with the situation. But his own wife is extremely nervous. Amid the chaos, the sick boy's father becomes desperate. He leaps up and yells that if the doctor cannot save him, then he must be trying to harm him. Chin, enraged by the turmoil, puts a swift end to it, declaring that the child's condition is now critical, and there is not a moment left to spare. During the argument, the boy suddenly coughs up blood, a sign his state is failing. His very life is now on the line. Kinley's eyes flash with shock and a sudden determination, and he commands everyone to make space. He tears the sheet from the child's body. While the sick boy's father continues to console him, Lee begins to move with blinding speed. Focusing his energy to aid the boy with his chi, he starts to visualize every vital point of a human form, so he can purge the boy's corrupted energy. He launches needles toward the afflicted child and begins striking all the boy's pressure points, calling out their names: Samung, Shuanyi, Star, T, Huagai, Tepe, Chianchu. When he is finished, the boy's mouth begins to gush, to purge everything that was poisoning his system. He sits up and violently vomits a torrent, fouling his clothes and the stretcher where he lay. The father is in disbelief that his son is conscious once more. With tears streaming, he embraces the boy and apologizes. The boy, who is ailing, says he is incredibly hungry and now desires some fried pork. The father, still holding the boy through his tears, says it is all right, they can now go eat. Now Kin says the boy is safe. But if the father still harbors any doubts, he can visit the hospital for a full examination. Deeply grateful, with hands clasped and still weeping, the father thanks Kinley, declaring he is a true physician. Everyone is astounded by the young Lei's skill in saving the child, and even though he is just a recent graduate, he possesses great abilities. We can see the old man who first started casting doubt on the doctor, walking toward a different young man, and a person punching the wall with rage and grinding his teeth is Lu Mingho. The old man tells Lu not to worry. Let him enjoy this for a while longer. Soon enough, he will make a fatal mistake. Night descends, and a man exits the clinic, overjoyed, saying he can finally have a child with his wife. The clinic's lights are extinguished, and its door is bolted shut. Kin is drained and begins to exit through the rear door. He's about to lock up everything and head home, but he hears a rustle coming from the trees. Something is very amiss at the back of the clinic. With a sharp gaze, he senses something is wrong in the garden. He spots a knife completely caked in blood by the corner of a tree, and it alarms him greatly. But what lies there is a woman, also drenched in blood, with all of her clothing shredded. Looking gravely wounded, she is silent and just stares at Kin, who tries to ask if she is there to see the physician. Barely able to finish his question, the woman begins charging toward him with incredible speed, appearing as if she is about to attack him. He throws his hands up in front of him, trying to block a blow, and begs the woman to stop, because he is the doctor of this place. But the woman, mid-charge, starts to falter and then collapses to the ground, directly in front of Kin Lai. He can now see more wounds on her body, and seeing the woman's desperate situation, he cannot simply leave her there and prepares to work even longer. He then carries the woman into his clinic and lays her on a stretcher to begin her treatment. After the woman is settled on the stretcher, she still remains unconscious. Lai pulls his phone from his pocket and begins to dial a number. He is attempting to call the residence, but the phone rings for quite some time, and no one picks up until Kenyon finally answers. On the other end of the telephone line, the doctor starts to explain that he had a very critical patient. Lying in her bed, the wife asks if her husband is not returning tonight, and if he will be staying at the clinic. He tells her yes, he will be sleeping at the clinic, because there is still a great deal of work to be done, and that she has no need to wait up for his arrival. Kenyon grows a bit frustrated with this news, because she was hoping to see her husband that night. She says he is a complete fool for doing this. She starts yelling at him over the phone, saying that if he truly wants to, he can work all day and reside in the clinic for eternity. Concerned about his wife's current emotional state, the young man thinks that the next time, he will have to buy something to try and appease her. Perhaps a thoughtful present, returning his focus to the injured woman. He opens his medical kit and gets back to work. The woman has many bullet holes and deep cuts on her body. He starts to extract the bullet he is able to. When the doctor goes to cut a necklace from the woman's neck, with his scissors, he notices the symbol on that necklace. It resembles a type of military identification tag. He sees it belongs to the 19th Division of an elite force. How did this person find their way to his clinic? Within the Chinese government and its military, there are numerous special operations divisions. MI-16 is comprised of people who specialize in stealing information. Some are hackers, weapons masters, and reverse engineering specialists, while the others just covertly manipulate public opinion. But MI-19 is the most unique of them all, says the woman who was wounded on the stretcher in Kim Lee's clinic. She is the leader of a highly specialized forces team and commands her subordinates to proceed with the mission. They are positioned at the top of a building, lit only by the city's countless nighttime lights. They leap toward the ground to commence their special operation, and a voice echoes through the woman's mind, reminding her that the entire 19th Division must be eliminated. The order came down from the highest command. This memory terrifies her, knowing she could now die. She starts plummeting towards the ground and cannot hold on. A desperate scream of no can be heard, but it is just the woman waking up on the stretcher. Her wounds are now bandaged, and she sees that she is safe. The agent cannot believe she did not perish and is still breathing. Kim Lee was mixing some potent solutions and sees that she has at last woken up. So the girl asks if he was the one who rescued her. While pouring the solution onto a piece of paper, he replies that if he had come 2 minutes later, he would not have been able to do a thing. The girl still shivers with pain from her injuries. She can barely rise from the bed she is in because it takes a great deal of strength, and the agony is still intense. Lai calmly asks where she's going while wrapping some packages. The girl, walking with extreme difficulty, says she has no home and does not know her destination. Upon hearing the young girl's response, Kim thinks about what she has said and then offers that she should remain there and that he is in need of a new assistant. The girl is taken aback by the doctor's proposition. He opens a window to allow the daylight to brighten the room. The girl asks if she is permitted and if she would be capable. The young man replies yes, that every single month he will pay an average of $5,000, and asks what she now thinks of these new terms. Perplexed by the kind doctor's assistance, she says she will do whatever she can to help him, that if there is any task the young man needs to be done, she will accomplish it for the doctor. The doctor says she must stay in the clinic to fully recover, demanding Kim lie open the door. He walks toward the clinic and begins to open the door slowly, but the door is shoved with such force that it smacks his face, and a girl yelling for Kim Lai rushes inside. This girl is Zijian, and she demands the young man accompany her. The doctor asks if she is gravely ill because it is very early for her to be there. Zijian retorts that he is the one who appears to be sick, saying she came to take him to a jewelry contest. Lai sees the tickets in Zijian's hand and takes them, but does not know what kind of competition this is. She tells him to be quiet and to just go with her. The two travel to the great palace of Yangsheng Betting Palace. Upon their arrival there, Se-jin sees her father and is yanking Kim by his tie. Se-jin's father, Mr. Tan, is very happy to see him there. The two greet each other warmly, and despite his anxiety, Lai smiles and apologizes for making Mr. Tan wait. Mr. Tan says there is no issue, because he wants the young man's help with the Jade Stone contest. Kim does not quite understand, and asks if the businessman wants the young man to be an advisor. Mr. Tan confirms that he does, saying he witnessed the young man's skill with his own 2 eyes, and he desires his help. He continues, explaining that this entire competition is split into 2 parts. One is the wager, where one buys a stone, and the other is cutting the stone to reveal what is inside. He also introduces Mr. Tan's other trusted employees. Wang Xiao, a man with a hat and a thick mustache. Zhao Lin, a very tall young man. And Lao Shu, a man who wears glasses. Se-jin says that her father has spent a lot on this competition, and that if they place in the top 3, Kim Lai will be handsomely rewarded. Mr. Tan confirms that if he helps them win the competition, he will grant him 10% of his company, called Tan Shi. Se-jin playfully blackmails the man, saying that as she is the best friend of his own wife, she could easily invent a lie about him. Frightened, Kim says he will do his absolute best. They start walking to the central screen of the Grand Palace, where the announcements of the stones for sale are being made. One of the young men asks, with a hint of scorn, if the young man is truly going to pick that ordinary stone. With a smile on his face, Kim replies that since he is here, he would like to try out his luck. Mr. Tan's most senior employee, Lao Shu, hands a golden card to the young man, and says that since he is in a generous mood, he will leave him 1,000 reals to try his hand. Kim Lai accepts it, but is a bit suspicious, as Mr. Tan said he could spend millions. The employees sneer and laugh at the newcomer, saying that 1,000 is more than enough and he shouldn't ask for more. They turn their backs and say that the young man cannot help them, that he is not qualified to be choosing the stones, along with the rest of the employees. Kim Lai glances at the golden card and lets out a laugh, imagining all the possibilities. The sun continues to shine upon the beautiful palace where they are. The young man begins to search among the more affordable stones. Many of them are priced at exactly 1,000 reals. Among all of these stones, one catches his eye because it has a strange blue glow, and turns to see it much more clearly. The stone costs 2,000 but is radiating a lot of energy, being likely incredibly valuable, and it captures Kim Lai's full attention. Kim Lai's eyes widened with pure astonishment upon seeing a stone that truly stood out from the others. A certain lady asked if he had any interest in buying the stone. The two men were having a conversation about the stone, and they figured it to be worth almost $5 million. Making their sure claims of victory piqued Kim Lai's interest. Noticing Kim Lai's diverted attention toward the two gentlemen, the lady called out to him a second time. He was startled and quite embarrassed upon the realization that he was so absorbed in the men's conversation that he had completely forgotten about the lady. The lady gave Kim Lai a card and explained that it was worth $50,000 and it would cover the entire price of the mysterious stone. He then simply waved his hand and replied, saying that it was fine, and then accepted the card. Suddenly, a voice shouted out to Kim Lai from the large crowd, leaving him to wonder who it could be. Three men with playful smirks were teasing him and asked him which stone he had ended up purchasing, and whether he believed he would win the first place prize. Lao Shu, with a very dismissive tone, suggested that he should just go back home, and implied that not everyone could work for Mayor Tan. He replied with total confidence that he was not certain if the stone he bought was top tier, but added that if it were not from Mr. Tan, he would not have even made an attempt. The mayor suddenly approached all of them and asked if they all had completed choosing their stones. Lao Shu, who was brimming with his own confidence, declared to the great Mayor Tan that they could guarantee they would make it to the top 3 because they had acquired the finest stones. Tan nodded his head in agreement and confirmed that they had indeed selected the best 2 possible stones. He quietly mused to himself that the stone's surface was exceptional and the quality inside it should be just as impressive. Suddenly, one of the men recognized Mayor Tan, and it was Q and Zhong, who was holding a young girl's waist. Zhong, with a truly mocking smirk, addressed Tan, saying he was brave enough to gamble again, this time after Tan had lost to him before. Tan, with a hint of great irritation, retorted that it was his own affair how he spent his own money. He burst into laughter at Tan's quick response. Hugh and Zhong's voice was now laced with amusement, because he could not believe that Tan would reach the point where he now used new people just to assist him. With a sneer, Zhong implied that Tan was using new recruits, because he had run out of capable people at Tan Key Jewelry. With a very condescending tone, Zhang suggested that Tan should just pack up his bags and depart before he endured any further humiliation. With a truly mocking laugh, Xinjiang told Tan that he had no place in the capital of Yangcheng, and he should just go back to Yangcheng. Lao Shu, with some reassuring words, told Mayor Tan to leave this matter to him, and he would ensure that they would utterly crush Qianzhong. The Jade contest had officially commenced, and the announcer, with a booming voice, told the participants to pay attention. The Jade contest had a great many participants. After all the participants got ready, the host then excitedly announced it was time to start the stone gambling portion of the contest. The one who would be hosting the entire Jade contest competition was going to be Shinran. Shinran instructed all of the contestants to come up onto the stage and to prepare themselves. Mayor Tan nervously asked Chin where the stones he had bought were. Chin then obliged and showed the mayor the stones he had bought that cost only 20,000. The 3 men erupted in laughter when they laid their eyes on the stone that Chin had purchased. Lao Shu mockingly declared that Chin had the nerve to show his garbage stone to them. Mr. Tan said to himself in utter disbelief that what price you can get from that garbage stone is just nonsense. He then began to doubt Chin Li's unique abilities, thinking that he was mistaken about what he thought of him. The MC, Shinran, shockingly announced that the first stone that was cut was whole green. After the initial stone, the second stone was also filled with a gorgeous glass royal green. The bidding for the stones had now started with very large numbers, one right after another. The number bids began with a loud shout at 30 million. Then it went up to 45 million. Hoshu was shocked and in disbelief that the bidding was so high, when the competition had just barely begun. The competition had only just barely started. It was already so intense. Jean Rand told the competitors that the top prices were 63 million, down to just 42 million. She then announced the final contestant, which was going to be Mayor Tan's stones. Mayor Tan willingly purchased their own stones for this competition. Lao Shu was walking up the stage while holding the 2 large stones. He is then consumed by nervousness and great anxiety while he is cutting the stone, hoping that the stones Mayor Tan has bought are truly green. A wave of sheer excitement rippled through the audience as they eagerly waited for the reveal of the stones. Hidden treasures. Mayor Tan, his face etched with deep worry, paced nervously, wondering what would be found inside the stone. On the other hand, Chin Li, with an air of complete detached calm, muttered to himself that millions of dollars just went down the drain. The heavy stones were sliced open, revealing their hidden inside, and a collective gasp of anticipation swept right through the audience. Everyone was holding their breath, hoping for just a flash of green within. A wave of disappointment then washed over the audience as they realized the stones inside was just nothing but a completely worthless piece of rock. The host and the others were in pure disbelief, saying how it is possible that the stone is just worthless. They had just wasted an amount of money that cost $5 million on stones. The audience erupted into loud laughter, mocking Mayor Tan's terrible judgment. Even Chin Ran, the announcer, was stunned and could not believe that something that cost so much would turn out to be completely nothing. Chin Ran, sighing in great disappointment, declared that the contestant from the Tanshi jewelry was a real letdown and a complete waste of money. "It's over," was in Mayor Tan's head as he experienced great embarrassment. The MC, with a tiny glimmer of hope in her eyes, announced that there may be a chance because one stone remained uncut. Mayor Tan, desperate to spare Chin Li any further humiliation, tried to stop him from cutting open the second stone. Chin Li smirked as he sliced the stone open, knowing that it wouldn't be worthless this particular time. The stone was cut open and the inside was imperial green. The host said that it's such an unremarkable stone, yet it turned out to be the imperial green. Everyone believed it was all over. After they had seen the first stone that was cut earlier, Lao Xiao could not believe that something that cost $20,000 for a stone would actually be completely green on the inside. He then added that Chin Li was just a very lucky bastard. Mayor Tan, lost in his own train of thoughts, lamented that if the $5 million were in Chin Li's hands, then he would have been the one to bring victory to Tanshi Jewelry. Shin Ran was completely and utterly baffled, watching as Chin Li continued to slice open the jade, thinking that he was crazy and unable to understand his actions. The mayor could not help himself and had now stood up, shouting at Chin Li to stop cutting open the jade stone. Chin Li, unfazed by what everyone was now saying about him cutting the stone, was still focused on getting the difficult work done. Tan was now shocked by what he was about to see. Chin Li, with a very dramatic flourish, sliced open the very final stone, sending a wave of anticipation throughout the audience. Shinran's voice, trembling with sheer astonishment, declared that the jade stone has jade hidden inside of it, and also has a piece of blood jade within the green jade. She then, right after that, also announced that the last piece of blood jade was sold for $1 billion. The crowd erupted in a frenzy of wild cheers, their voices echoing throughout the hall, as they marveled at the incredible and rare jade stone. Chin Li, holding the jade high up, declared with his unwavering confidence that this jade was the final belonging of Mr. Tan. Shin Ran then exclaimed with her excitement that that was the rarest jade among all of the jades. He then added that the stone was so very unique that it required 1,000 years just to form. She even exaggerated that. This jade was worth the same as a person's life, even hers. A wave of complete frenzy washed over the crowd as they screamed and shouted out their bids, desperate to claim the prized jade stone for themselves. The man, taken aback, then confirmed that Chin Li had unearthed a real blood jade, a gemstone of truly exceptional rarity. That was a long night with all of the auctions that had been going on. One fine morning, a sudden coughing fit racked an old man seated towards the back, his own face contorting in his discomfort. The man stated in his very worried voice that his father was getting worse and worse. The old man started to speak, but abruptly stopped mid-sentence because of a violent coughing fit, blood staining his lips. The panel went back to the auction, and the stone that had been cut by Chin Li was sold for $2 billion. Shinran then congratulated Tan Chi Jewelry for winning the auction, bidding with a price of $2 billion. The crowd erupted in cheers for Chin Li and for the mayor, who stood on the stage after they had won the auction. The host declared that this auction was indeed remarkable, with a winning bid of $2 billion. Setting a new record that would likely never be broken. With a truly graceful bow, Mayor Tan conveyed his heartfelt appreciation to Chin Li, acknowledging his significant role in the events of that day. Tan expressed his gratitude to him, admitting that without his own efforts, Tan Chi Jewelry's reputation would have been completely tarnished. He then also apologized for previously questioning Chin Li's abilities. Chin Li expressed his gratitude to the kind mayor, assuring him that he had not taken his doubts personally and appreciated the kind mayor's kindness. The mayor, in a gesture of his apology, offered him all the proceeds from the jade sale. He was so stunned by the mayor's statement that he could not speak. Zijing then interjected, declaring that he was a highly esteemed guest of the Tan family. She then further explained that by excelling in the jade contest, there was a chance that they could secure a strong position in the Zhong province. Suddenly, a voice called out to Chin Li from within the crowd, and behind the speaker, there were several figures who appeared to be acting as bodyguards. It was revealed that the man's own name was Zhang Jin, and he called out to Chin Li. to extend an invitation from the prestigious Zhang family, urging him to come and join them. Zhang Jin presented him with an invitation card, which he did readily accept. The following day, Xin Li was inside the car, looking at the invitation that he accepted, and the driver told him that they had now arrived. It was a fine evening when Xin Li arrived at the Zhang family's huge house. The Zhang family resided in a grand and beautiful mansion that was heavily guarded by a large team of capable bodyguards. Xin Li was so stunned by the absolutely enormous house that he had to take a picture of it on his phone. One of the guards accompanied him as he went all around the house. The guard then knocked on the door, indicating to the young master that Xin Li, whom they had invited, had finally arrived. Zhang Jin, known as the young master, opened the door and then wholeheartedly welcomed him. He commended Xin Li's great performance at the Jade contest and then remarked that it had truly opened up his eyes. Curious about the late-night invitation, Xin Li then asked Zhang Jin what the occasion was for summoning him to the Zhang family's estate. Zhang Jin chuckled and replied that the invitation was not for anything significant, but he was simply curious about a certain something. The young master was indeed intrigued by Xin Li's own actions at the Jade contest, and questioned him about his strange decision to continue carving the very first jade. He also inquired if Xin Li was well aware of the blood jade, hidden deep within the jade stone. Xin Li responded with honesty and then explained that he felt a certain warmth emanating from the jade when he held it, and this very unusual sensation made him feel suspicious. The jade stone made him suspicious and very curious, which led him to cut the whole stone open. Jin found his explanation to be amusing, and then proposed that Xin Li should find him another jade stone. He was then interrupted by Zhang Gu's terrible cough, who had an extremely intense illness. Xin Li's attention was diverted by Gu's harsh cough, causing him to hesitate in his response to Jun Gu. Sensing Xin Li's own gaze upon him, inquired if something about him seemed out of the ordinary. Xin Li was concerned for Zhang Gu's own well-being, and expressed that his condition was dire and that without treatment, it could turn out to be quite bad. The old man was taken aback by Xin Li's shocking condition, even surprised that he possessed such expertise in medicine. He recently established a clinic, as Xin Li had said, and then politely asked if he would mind letting him check his pulse. Young Jun interrupted their heated conversation and expressed his disbelief that Xin Li was a practitioner of traditional medicine. The old man, Zhang Gu, lamented that despite their extensive searching, they had found no possible cure for his illness. Given Xin Li's own medical expertise, Zhang Hu agreed to allow him to fully examine him. Xin Li then began to circulate his internal energy all throughout his body. He realized with a great start that the malevolent energy was on the verge of devouring Zhang Hu's vital essence. The internal energy of Xin Li surged forth from inside his body, dispelling the malevolent spells that had taken a hold of Jungo. After a thorough examination that had lasted for about an hour, Jungo felt a noticeable and welcome shift in his condition, a great change from his previous state. With a mix of his shock and his joy, Janguk exclaimed that he felt significantly more comfortable. After Xin Li's in-depth examination, Xin Li scratched his own head, admitting that he had only managed to temporarily suppress Janguk's condition and not to cure it entirely. He continued on, explaining that to eradicate Janguk's illness, they needed to delve in much deeper and uncover the root cause within Gu himself. Zhang Jun interjected and then emphasized that he had always been diligently caring for his own grandfather, and that Gu had rarely ventured outside. However, Zhang Jun was unable to complete his own thought. Xin Li pondered for a moment while stroking his chin thoughtfully. He then inquired of Zhang Gu if he had recently come into possession of any valuable treasures. Gu contemplated the strange question for a moment, but before he could give a response, Zhang Jun quickly interjected, revealing that his grandfather had indeed received a new treasure, which was a valuable jade pillow. His suspicions about the jade pillow had now intensified. He believed it was likely unearthed from a very old tomb, could be the source of Gu's strange illness. He also added that if it is used for the long term, it can cause death to the person who is using it. Young Gu, startled by his quick deduction, confirmed his own suspicions and added that he had been experiencing an unusual coldness while sleeping on. In utter shock, extolled Xin Li's name. He revealed his grandfather had suffered a grave illness for years and could not fathom that Xin Li was a true physician, possessing such incredible diagnostic skill. The heir of the Gu family then proclaimed, Whether or not Qin Li could procure the fabled blood jade, the mighty Zhang family would fulfill any desire he possessed, no matter the scale. He was moved by Zhang Jun's immense offer, but he affirmed that saving lives was his sworn duty. He pledged to diligently seek out the rare blood jade, but he had a single, crucial request for Zhang Jun in exchange. Zhang Jun, with absolute, unshakable confidence, gave his solemn word to Qin Li that the Zhang family would leverage all their power to aid him. He then revealed a treasured photo of himself as a young boy, standing with his parents, a trace of sorrow in his tone. He confessed they had vanished a decade ago, and he had heard no word of their location ever since. Zhang Jun accepted the photograph from Qin Li's grasp. With a resolute gaze, Zhang Jun vowed that it could take years, but he would exhaust every resource to locate his lost parents. A faint spark of hope ignited within Qin Li's eyes, as he stated he was trusting in Zhang Jun's vast capabilities. In exchange for Zhang Jun's powerful assistance, he then swore that he would unearth the blood jade and would deliver it once the treasure was secured. Zhang Jun conveyed his sincere gratitude to him and then presented him with a card holding 200 million. He then clarified it was a payment in advance for when Qin Li finally located the blood jade, and that his gratitude would be immeasurable. He took the card, then clasped hands with Zhang, vowing he would return once he had found the artifact. Their pact was sealed with Zhang thanking Qin Li for his trust. A shadow of concern crossed Zhang Jun as he considered the future, if their Zhang family could reclaim its former prestige. The next morning's sun was bright as Qin Li, still heavy with the remnants of sleep, journeyed back toward his new clinic, muttering that he was relieved to return, and that the clinic needed someone to manage it. While he was away, as he entered his clinic, a patient was already there, waiting for him, claiming that he suffered from recent headaches and needed Qin Li to perform an examination. Still half asleep, Qin Li mumbled for him to follow, so that he could begin the man's diagnosis. Suddenly, a loud voice from outside boomed that Mr. Tang Bahuya, the family's patriarch, will be visiting the clinic today. The man also declared that no one should miss this chance, because his quality was absolutely guaranteed. The old man with Qin Li was completely stunned, and he recognized the name Mr. Tang, who was the most renowned traditional doctor in the city. Mr. Tang sneered in reply that the old man was right, and then he added that their century-old medical hall could never compare to some other upstart medical clinic. The old patient rushed over to Mr. Tang, completely abandoning Qin Li, and then declared he would register with Mr. Tang instead. Mr. Tang, with malice, spread false rumors to the old man of Qin Li's fake cures. The old man was horrified by what Mr. Tang had just told him, and the fact he nearly became a patient of Qin Li's. Qin Li approached them with a cold, menacing look, stating that Mr. Tang should consider the price for spreading such lies. The old man and Mr. Tang exchanged anxious looks, understanding the weight of their foolish actions. Mr. Tang then replied in a trembling, stammering voice that he had merely heard a rumor from somewhere else. Suddenly, another old man interrupted them, saying Qin Li should not argue with an apprentice like Mr. Tang. This old man was the true master of Tang's Chinese medicine, stating that, as a physician, Qin Li lacks the patience to argue. The master says he has practiced medicine for decades, and he cannot fathom how these young people, in this era, dare call themselves traditional medicine practitioners. He then turned to the afflicted old man, saying he would cure him of his terrible illness. The afflicted old man then removed his hat, unveiling a truly shocking sight. His scalp was covered in countless circular sores. The afflicted man, his face red with his shame, hesitantly asked the master if he could be cured. The master, in disbelief at what he had just seen, exclaimed this was the first time seeing such a disease. In his many decades of practice, the master of Tang's Chinese medicine hall was unsure of what he was even supposed to say, trying to compose himself while searching for the man's cure. Qin Li then interjected, declaring the proper name of the disease, and that it must be treated with a heated needle. He also warned that if this disease was handled improperly, it could easily endanger the old man's life. The master of the hall roared at him, telling him not to lecture him on something, coming from a mere upstart like Qin Li, about the art of curing a disease. The sore was then pierced by a needle from the master, but Qin Li screamed at him, commanding that he must stop. He then proclaimed that it is a variant of viral herpes, and that you cannot simply puncture the infection. The afflicted old man collapsed to the ground the moment the needle pierced the sore, and shrieked in agony. The old master was bewildered, unable to believe what was happening to the afflicted man. He rushed to assist the old man on the floor. However, the old master refused to let Qin Li interfere with his own patient. Qin Li, his rage finally boiling over, struck the old master hard across the face for his arrogance. He was furious at the master, declaring that men like him, who treat a patient like a simple tool, do not deserve the title of doctor. His eyes narrowed with focus as he snatched a needle. As he began to channel his own energy into it, he muttered that the man's vital energy was in chaos. He was not certain if it was too late to save the old man. The vile poison had already begun to spread, making it extremely difficult to treat the old man. Tang's bungling of the needles had worsened the man's state. An internal coldness had now invaded his heart and was relentlessly sapping his life force. This meant Qin Li had exhausted all of his other options and was now forced to use a dangerous, an unconventional method to save this patient. Qin Li was now using his own qi to heal the patient. He focused his gaze intently and used his power to pierce each of the festering sores that had formed one by one, effectively purging the entire illness. He then let out a long sigh of relief. His tension finally gone as he saw the old man improve. His dangerous treatment had been a success, with the old patient now finally recovering. Qin Li then turned to the old master and irritably declared that he was a disgrace to traditional Chinese medicine. The master scowled with rage after what Qin Li had said. The old master, his face completely twisted with fury, called Qin Li a bastard and asked if he was challenging him. Qin Li then turned back around with a look that found the old master's words amusing. He then issued a challenge about saving lives, and whoever was the first one to make a single mistake would leave the world of traditional Chinese medicine forever. The two men, their eyes locked in a silent, tense challenge, found the entire situation strangely exhilarating. With a very confident smirk, Qin Li accepted the old master's challenge without a thought. On the day the great challenge arrived, a huge crowd gathered, their curiosity piqued by the spectacle. Whispers began to fill the air, everyone wondering what could possibly draw such a large crowd. One man in the crowd began to explain that Qin Li's new clinic was about to compete against the renowned old master from Yangcheng in a public display of their healing skills. The treatment of many diseases would be the focus of the challenge. Anticipation crackled through the crowd as they buzzed with excitement. This challenge promised to be a truly thrilling spectacle, and everyone was eager to see who would be victorious. As the sun started its slow descent, casting long shadows across the large gathering, the challenge began. Qin Li stood ready to treat his patients, while his rival from Yangcheng attended to his own hopefuls. A very long line of eager patients snaked through the courtyard of the Yangcheng master's clinic, each one hoping for a chance to be healed by the physician. One of Qin Li's own patients, beaming with gratitude, spoke highly of the doctor's great skills, describing how much better they felt after his amazing treatment. The other patients treated by Qin Li, witnessing his incredible skill firsthand, were just as impressed. They could not believe such a young doctor could have such a deep and profound understanding of medicine. The Yangcheng master, a seasoned veteran with more than 3 decades of experience, remarked that it had taken him many years to achieve his mastery of medicine. Yet Qin Li, a total newcomer, had shown flawless skill right from the very beginning, making not one single error. The Yangcheng master, intrigued by Qin Li's great talent, gestured for one of his assistants to go approach Qin Li. The Yangcheng master was preparing to see his next patient and was shocked by the unusual and complex ailment he found. Shock and great surprise registered on his face as he saw the severity of the disease he was facing. The assistant who was sent to observe Qin Li was now the next one in line, waiting for her turn to be treated by the young doctor. The men standing in line right behind the assistant were completely captivated by her beauty. She then described her recent symptoms of dizziness and a strange swelling in her chest. However, the assistant's words were laced with deep suspicion, as if she were testing Qin Li's skills with a fake ailment. The assistant then seized Qin Li's hands and was about to place them directly on her chest, while claiming that she could not bear the pain anymore. Qin Li quickly withdrew his hand from her grasp and told her he would check her pulse first, so there was no reason for her to worry. He started to diagnose her pulse with his skilled fingers and power, tracing the pulse's very delicate rhythm. The assistant, in a gesture of supposed trust, gently caressed his hand with her very own, urging him to examine her more thoroughly. The assistant's pulse was both steady and strong, which made Qin Li find it very strange that even her organs were all placed correctly, so it did not seem to be a disease either. He was intensely focused on the assistant's strange pulse, but was then jolted by a piercing scream that erupted from a Yangcheng master station. The source of the scream was a man who had collapsed on the ground, writhing in absolute pain. The Yangcheng master's assistants rushed to his side, while urgently asking about his well-being. The afflicted man's mouth began to foam, sending all the assistants into a complete frenzy. They quickly began to initiate CPR, while others frantically called for an ambulance to take the stricken man to the nearest hospital. While witnessing this unfolding chaos, the Yangqing master was completely stunned. He felt a terrible, growing sense of dread, realizing he might be outmatched by this Qin Li, who could possibly treat the man while he was powerless. The assistants kept calling the urgent care center in a panic. The patients who were waiting in the Yangqing line had witnessed his inability to help the collapsed man and had now lost faith in his abilities. They all began to switch their sides, flocking over to Qin Li's clinic, convinced that he was the more reliable of the two doctors. The assistant saw the sudden shift in allegiance to Qin Li, and then she began to formulate a desperate plan. She realized that she had to act very quickly to try and regain some of their lost ground, which is why she suddenly acted as if she were dizzy, and then she pretended to completely collapse. The next patient in line, upon seeing the girl collapse, panicked, exclaiming she needed immediate medical attention. The Yangqing master was trying to regain his composure and warned Qin Li not to become too complacent. He pointed out Qin Li now had his own patient who collapsed, implying the situation was not as clear-cut as it seemed. The Yangqing master was trying to maintain some semblance of control, and added that if Qin Li failed to treat the collapsed woman, the entire challenge would be considered a simple draw. He was determined to salvage something from the situation, even if it only meant a stalemate. Qin Li, seeing right through the woman's act, devised a truly singular solution. He then grabbed a long and very sharp metal stick, declaring it the only tool that could achieve the desired result. While wielding the long metal stick, he warned a misplaced prick could possibly cripple the woman. As Qin Li began his slow countdown, the woman, despite her initial deception, felt a growing sense of real unease. The impending threat she had fabricated was starting to feel real. The woman, unable to bear the mounting tension, abruptly stood up, sheepishly admitting she was not sick. She tried to mask her embarrassment with a nervous chuckle. She confessed that she had been sent by Dr. Tang, while pleading with Qin Li to please release her. Qin Li, with a completely triumphant air, declared to Dr. Tang that he had now lost the challenge. He pointed out that Dr. Tang's failure to treat one of his own patients had ultimately resulted in his defeat. The elderly doctor, his voice laced with pure anger, reminded Qin Li of his highly esteemed reputation as Yangqing's most renowned doctor. He then bragged that Yin Lu Zhang had to make concessions to him. He glared at the old master, his hatred palpable, while implying, "What kind of doctor uses tricks to sabotage a competition?" Qin Li's accusations of sabotage against the old master called into question the master's own integrity and his standing within the medical community. The old master's voice crackled with fury as he vowed revenge, promising Qin Li this day would be etched into his memory. One morning, Qin Li took off his lab coat, his mind still reeling from the entire encounter. As he stepped back inside the clinic, suddenly, the girl he saved appeared, her eyes flashing with a fierce determination, and asked if he wanted her to handle that old man. Qin Li's eyes then fell upon the young girl, and he asked if she felt well enough to be on her feet. The girl expressed her gratitude for his kind concern and assured him that she felt completely well. She then further indicated that he should not hesitate to ask for her assistance if it was needed. He assured her she would make a full recovery from her wounds under his direct care at the clinic. Qin Li then mentioned that he would have a task for her to do in a few days. Out of nowhere, his phone began to ring, cutting him off in mid-sentence. He answered the phone, and the girl speaking on the line mentioned that Mr. Zhang had entrusted her to give him information on the source of the raw gemstones. She emphasized that the delivery of the precious stones to Yangsheng was expected to happen within the next week. The caller indicated she had another matter to discuss with Qin Li, one she believed would be advantageous for him. The young girl's words intrigued him, and he wanted to meet and discuss it in person later. It showed she had just emerged from the shower, and then texted him the details of when and where to meet. At Tang Bavel's home, the television blared a news report about a medical sparring contest that had taken place right here in Yangsheng the day before. The news declared that Tang Novel, the proprietor of Tang's Chinese medicine, had suffered a humiliating defeat and was subsequently retiring from the medical field. The news report then further stated that the Tang family had faced an unprecedented level of public scrutiny. Enraged by the news report about his family, Dr. Tang, who was watching television, angrily commanded the staff to switch it off. A voice suddenly called out from beyond the main door, inquiring about Mr. Tang's presence. With a tone of great annoyance, Mr. Tang declared that the person seeking entry would not find what they were looking for. Inside, the person at the door offered Mr. Tang a deal, saying they could help him get his revenge on Qin Li. Intrigued by this mysterious man's proposal, they permitted him to enter the residence. Mr. Tang's jaw dropped in pure astonishment as he realized the identity of the man who had just entered his home. Lu Minghao asserted to Mr. Tang that he was the only one capable of seeking true retribution against Qin Li while handing a folded paper to him. Upon examining the strange document presented to him, Mr. Tang was completely taken aback and inquired about the nature of the prescription within. The sky was overcast as Qin Li stretched his limbs and casually asked his new assistant if she would like to join him for a walk in the fresh air. He mentioned that a leisurely stroll could aid her recovery. Qin Li expressed his hope that she would also successfully complete the assigned task he had entrusted to her. She politely declined the invitation to walk, expressing gratitude for his concern. The girl also assured Qin Li that she was feeling quite well and pledged that she would fulfill the assigned task. He scratched his face awkwardly, saying the task was simply to purchase an apartment. Later, on a sunny day, they decided to walk together. Qin Li called Liang Qing's name out of the blue. She just stared at him, waiting to hear what he would say. He was suddenly quite curious about her. So he asked how old she was when she began her training, and then he asked about her parents. King responded in a cold, frigid tone, stating that she was raised in a training camp since the age of 3, and she remembers nothing at all about her parents. A memory then surfaced, revealing Liang Qing in the past. Clutching a knife, he then felt a pang of deep sympathy for her, silently acknowledging the hardship that she must have endured to join the army at such a very tender age. Moved by his compassion for Liang Qing, he advised her to stop sleeping on the hard floor. Without a moment's pause, King readily agreed to his proposal. A sudden commotion and a strange sight in the bustling street then caught Qin Li's complete attention, diverting his gaze away from his companion. The shop was an antique store filled with unusual artifacts that drew his attention, and he curiously picked up an antique dagger. The dagger appeared aged and tarnished, which prompted Liang Qing to then inquire if Qin Li actually intended to purchase. The antique dealer explained he had stumbled upon the dagger by chance and offered to sell it to him for $500. Finding the price to be agreeable, Qin Li accepted the strange dagger. Intrigued by Qin Li's choice of the old dagger, Liang Qing inquired if it held any particular value or any significance. Qin Li assured her that the answer would be revealed soon. As he produced a lighter from out of his pocket, he then ignited the lighter's flame, holding the old dagger high above the flame, while channeling his own magical energy from deep within. The heat from the flame began to work its magic and slowly dissolved the many layers of rust that had been obscuring the dagger's true beauty. With their dark veil now being lifted, the dagger's intricate design and its gleaming surface began to reveal themselves to them, shimmering in the warm firelight. King was absolutely astonished by what she witnessed, realizing that the dagger was no ordinary weapon at all. Having now completed his task, Qin Li presented the now restored dagger to King, inquiring if she found it to her own liking, and then he declared that it was hers. Overwhelmed with complete and total disbelief, Liang Qing expressed her gratitude to the boss with a radiant smile. At that moment, Qin Li's phone started to ring, signaling that there was an incoming call. While Liang Qing was honing her skills with the new dagger, Qin Li quickly answered the phone call. The sound of sobs filled the air, her voice trembling with fear as she relayed the devastating news. Zieten and their friend had both been taken, and the weight of this loss felt completely crushing. The weight of the news settled heavily upon Qin Li, and his face was now etched with great concern. He bid a hasty farewell to Liang Qing and provided her with a card to find a suitable residence, hastily revealing the private access code. Liang Qing received the card with a hint of uncertainty and inquired if she had the freedom to choose her own house. As Qin Li sprinted away, he expressed his great confidence in Liang Qing's judgment regarding the important selection of a house. Returning to the call, he reassured Qin Yan, urging her to please remain calm and to provide him with the specifics of the situation. As the sun dipped far below the horizon, a vibrant scene unfolded at the suburban racing circuit. Numerous individuals gathered there with their vehicles and appeared to be enjoying themselves immensely. The man ripping Zieten's hair launched into a tirade, accusing her of sole responsibility for her predicament and greatly insulting her. Zieten winced in pain as the man's grip tightened on her hair, and her bound hands rendered her completely helpless. As she sat on the ground, the man, revealed to be Zieten's former romantic partner, Fang Zhao, continued his harsh verbal assault, demanding her complete obedience and subservience. He then further admonished her, instructing her to cease any attempts at provocation and to abandon any pretense of her innocence. Fang said he liked Zieten and wanted her family's money. Zieten's voice, trembling with her anger, cut through the air like a whip as she shouted that Fang was indeed shameless. One of the guys pointed something out to Fang, and when he looked, He was completely shocked. A vehicle pulled up and a man emerged carrying a suitcase. The man, identified as Chin Li, declared his sole purpose for arriving, stating he had come to settle the entire ransom payment. One of the guys smirked and told Fong that Chin Li seemed like the right guy. Despair washed over Zieten as she contemplated the futility of Chin Li's arrival. She questioned his ability to even rescue her, considering his perceived inadequacies and the overwhelming odds that he now faced. Fong stood right in front of him and said, "It has been a tough trip for you to get here." Then, Fong instructed him to put the money on the ground and leave. Chin Li held the belief that fulfilling the ransom demand would secure Zieten's immediate release. He then questioned Fong's lack of any moral scruples, inquiring about their disregard for the ethical implications of kidnapping. A wave of mocking laughter rippled through the group, their eyes gleaming with a cruel amusement. One of the guys said Chin Li was a complete joke to them. Fong approached him, remarking on the Chu family's audacious decision. Fong further declared his intention to acquire both Zieten and the monetary payment, blowing smoke in Chin Li's face. With a sharp snap of his fingers, Fong directed one of his associates to go retrieve the money. A member of the group, retrieving the money in Chin Li's presence, informed him that his long journey had been in vain and that he could now return home. One of the men assured him they would ensure Zieten's safety, hinting at their intention to exploit her sexually. Chin Li delivered a single, powerful kick, sending the man soaring high through the air. As he flew, a shower of money rained down around him. Fong's eyes widened in shock, and he let out a furious curse, directed right at Chin Li. Then he ordered his men, demanding they take care of him. Chin Li's body pulsed with a radiant energy, his immense powers surging. The men saw their chance, and then launched a coordinated attack, converging upon him all at once. He unleashed a flurry of powerful punches and kicks, each strike precise and utterly devastating. The men were overwhelmed by his strength and began to fall, one after another, unable to withstand his onslaught. A man, taking advantage of Chin Li's focus, lunged from behind while screaming out a challenge. Chin Li was momentarily surprised, but he reacted with lightning speed. He spun around, delivering a powerful kick to the man's back, sending him crashing hard to the ground. The remaining men, terrified by Chin Li's overwhelming power, turned and fled. Fong watched the scene unfold, staring in disbelief, as he couldn't comprehend Chin Li's strength. Chin Li then advanced toward Fong, his gaze unwavering. With a swift and powerful movement, he shoved Fong hard to the ground, sending him crashing onto the hard, unforgiving surface. Chin Li's body thrummed with raw energy, his powers now radiating outward. His eyes were fixed on Fong, and his fist was drawn back, poised to deliver a devastating blow right to his face. Fong, upon seeing the impending punch aimed at his face, desperately pleaded with Chin Li to please spare him. Chin Li was unmoved by Fong's pleas and showed no mercy. He launched his fist forward with his full force, connecting with Fong's face in a truly devastating blow. Zieten watched the entire scene unfold, her eyes completely wide with disbelief. She could not reconcile the powerful figure before her with the seemingly useless man that she once knew. Chin Li stood alone, his body radiating with power, a beacon of strength amidst all of the fallen. The men lay scattered all around him, defeated and completely unable to rise. Zieten, her mind reeling from what she had just witnessed, could not help but ask herself. He exhaled. The brutal fight had finally ended with his victory. His attention then shifted towards Zieten, and he immediately moved to sever the ropes that bound her. His hands worked quickly and with purpose. They had to move fast before Zitten's family was overcome with worry. As Chin Li worked to release Zieten from her restraints, she flinched suddenly, her voice laced with agony. They departed, their footsteps echoing in the silent aftermath. Zieten, her heart overflowing with gratitude, could not find the right words to properly thank Chin Li. His heroic actions had saved her, and she was utterly at a loss for words. Zitten's face reddened with a mix of bashfulness and thanks, and she shyly called out Chin Li's name. He pivoted, his expression one of curiosity, anticipating what she was about to say. Her fingers nervously pushed a loose strand of hair back. She gathered her courage and presented Chin Li an invitation. To conceal her embarrassment, Zieten quickly claimed the invitation was for her own protection, as she feared the thugs might return for her. She awkwardly said that was the sole reason Chin Li should accompany her. Chin Li found her request quite unexpected, and never imagined she would invite him to a sorority. She suddenly became sullen, fearing that Chin Li might misunderstand her invitation. Chin Li's expression softened as he understood, and he accepted her offer with a slight smile. The following morning, Chin Li went back to the clinic and looked for his assistant. He had to discuss the task he gave her. He needed to confirm that she was making progress and that the plan was on schedule. The assistant, with a composed look, reported that she had already successfully finished the assignment. He had given her in a very professional manner. The assistant informed Chin Lai that he could inspect the completed work at the Tan House office later that afternoon. Chin Lai was truly amazed by the speed with which she had managed to complete the task. He spoke to himself with great relief, saying it was finally time to give Chin Yin a proper home. He felt a deep sense of responsibility for her well-being, and giving her a safe and independent home was a high priority. He then invited his assistant to accompany him to inspect the house that had been chosen. Chin Lai and his assistant were settled in the car, prepared for their house hunting expedition. As the car drove off, he allowed a long yawn, his eyelids drooping slightly. But then his phone suddenly rang. He answered the phone, anticipating a routine call. It was Jiao and Jen on the other line, his voice filled with great excitement, saying that he had some incredible news for him. Jen gently watered some of his vibrant plants as he conversed with Chin Lai on the phone. His news left Chin Lai stammering, a shocked cough escaping from his lips. It appeared that Jiao and Jen had gone far above and beyond, surpassing even Chin Li's hopes with his ambitious purchase. Realizing that his words had left Chin Li in shock, he quickly gave him reassurance that the stores were still in the process of renovation. Chin Li, still reeling from the announcement, decided to show his gratitude to Jiao and Jen for his efforts, instead of focusing on his surprise. He praised him, calling him a great benefactor to the Zhang family. Jen also expressed his great eagerness for Chin Li's arrival in Zhangzhou and waited patiently for the moment they could finally reunite. Jen continued on to say that upon Chin Li's return from Jiangzhou, he would be giving him a very luxurious villa as a true token of his appreciation. Chin Li politely refused Jiao and Jen's generous offer, explaining he would not let him squander his own money. He had already purchased a new villa for himself, which made Jiao and Jen's gift completely unnecessary. He and his assistant arrived at the opulent Sky One villa and were warmly greeted by the staff. One of the staff members approached Liang King with curiosity, asking why he was not with her. Liang King, however, pointed out that the man beside her was her boss, and that Chin Lai was the very person who had acquired the luxurious Sky One villa. The staff member, judging by his plain appearance, could not believe he was the one who had bought Sky One. She was very hesitant and unsure if he was really the owner of such a lavish home. The staff member was still utterly convinced that the man before her was likely a very poor man, trying to appear wealthy. She believed Mr. Jiao, another potential buyer, would be more likely to buy the villa and would probably give her a $500,000 gift in return. Determined to steer Chin Li away, she started to tell a lie, claiming that the villa he had reserved had already been sold. She insisted they leave and vowed to return their deposit. King protested, pointing out she was the one who paid the deposit in advance. She continued her complaint and questioned why the staff would resell the villa to another buyer, despite them arriving first. The staff member, looking down her nose at him, declared that the villa should be kept for someone of a more distinguished class. Liang King and Chin Li were becoming more and more irritated by the staff member's comments. Finally speaking, Chin Li questioned the rude staff member about the level of credibility they hold at Qian. How? The staff member, unfazed by Chin Li's words, continued to discriminate against him, insisting that he was merely pretending to be wealthy. She told him in a very dismissive tone that they were not qualified to live in their villa at Qian. How? Suddenly, a woman from behind them interrupted their conversation and asked if what the staff member said was true. The girl, revealed to be Zhang Qixio, stepped forward, challenging the staff member's claim that Qian how only served guests of noble and very high status. The staff member, taken aback by Zhang Qixio's intervention, seemed to want to retract her previous statements. Enraged by the staff member's discriminatory remarks, Suzu delivered a resounding slap right across her face as she slapped the rude staff member. She declared that Mr. Chin Li was their most distinguished guest. Following the heated confrontation, Zhang Qixu approached Chin Li and introduced herself, mentioning she had seen him at Zhang Zhong's residence. She also revealed she was the one he had contacted on the phone. Regarding the source of the raw, precious stone, Chin Li was slightly taken aback when he realized that she was the voice on the other end of the previous phone call. She apologized to him for the staff member's incredibly rude behavior and the inconvenience that this had caused him. After Chushio apologized, Chin Li reassured her it was fine. The staff member, still reeling from the hard slap, was astonished to witness Chin Li's familiarity with Chushio. His voice now laced with disappointment. He addressed the rude staff member, saying not to attempt something like this again. The staff member, still on the floor, quickly apologized and promised not to repeat her actions. Chin Li, his frustration now evident, declared that they would only be returning Once all necessary procedures for the villa were finalized, visibly embarrassed, the staff member apologized again and promised to personally oversee the completion of the villa's arrangements. The remaining staff members bowed to them respectfully as Chin Lee and his assistant turned to finally leave. With a sharp snap of her own fingers, young Chuk-soo signaled her bodyguards to remove the staff member from her presence. She made it clear that she wanted no further interaction with the rude woman. The bodyguards swiftly obeyed her, their grip firm as they pulled the staff member away. Despair and disbelief were etched all across her face as she was dragged from the scene. Later that day, a chaotic scene unfolded in front of Chin Lee's clinic, with police officers and many concerned patients, forming a large and extremely agitated crowd. A woman with visible and severe injuries stood amidst the crowd, her voice filled with pure anger. She accused the clinic of selling some counterfeit medication, claiming that it was the cause of her disfigurement. Several other women, their faces similarly marked, echoed the young woman's grave accusations. They all claimed that after taking medication from this clinic, their faces had been horribly disfigured. The women's voices rose up in unison, accusing the doctor of being unscrupulous, a fraud, and indifferent to the well-being of his patients. As Chin Lee arrived at his own clinic, he was met with a total scene of chaos. A large crowd had gathered outside, and he could not help but wonder what caused such a commotion. Spotting him, the young woman who had been shouting accusations pointed directly at him and declared him to be the fraudulent doctor, responsible for selling the counterfeit medication. The other people in the crowd turned their gazes toward Chin Lee, their expressions a mixture of both anger and disbelief. The young woman's voice then rose in its intensity, demanding that he be put under arrest. The woman pointed a finger right at Chin Lee, her voice sharp and very accusatory. Completely bewildered by the strange situation, he looked at the woman with a mix of shock and confusion, seeking the right answer about the fake medicine she mentioned. The woman, her own face marred, pointed accusingly right at Chin Lee. It was his skincare products. She claimed that it caused all the damage. He stroked his own chin thoughtfully, and then a wave of realization washed right over him. It was the skincare products he had given to Lee Wan. He might have a lead on what was happening at the clinic. More women, their faces bearing very similar signs of damage, joined the huge chorus of accusations. They pointed right at Chin Lee, calling him a swindler who had preyed on their desire for beauty. He had stolen their money and left them with permanent scars. The women, now unified in their anger, turned to the police and demanded they arrest the fake doctor. One of the police officers then stepped forward, his voice firm and quite authoritative, saying that Chin Lee should come along with them. Liang Chin, with a sudden and swift burst of action, stepped in front of him, shielding him from the arresting officers. The police officer, unfazed by Liang Chin's intervention, responded that Chin Lee should be questioned by the police department. Chin Lee, on the other hand, remained calm and unfazed by what was happening around him. The police officer then barked at Chin Lee, his voice sharp, commanding him to put his hands up and not move. With a very quick movement, Chin Lee pulled out his phone and displayed it to the officers. He explained that he was on a call and was seeking a witness to clear his name regarding the skincare product problems. The police officers exchanged very confused glances, but one of them reached out and took the phone. Identifying himself, the police officer explained the situation to the person on the other end of the line, detailing the accusations surrounding the skincare products. Her voice, sharp and extremely irritated, erupted from the phone, saying that it was simply impossible because she also used the Cancun skincare products. Minutes ticked by, each one adding to the growing tension at the clinic. Suddenly, a woman emerged from the large crowd. It turned out to be the same woman on the phone, who had raced to the scene of the commotion at the clinic. The woman, irradiating cheerful energy despite the tense situation, hopped out of her car and asked Chin Lee if he had any new skincare products. The police and others turned their gaze to the woman, who had just appeared. Chin Lee, with a hint of exasperation in his voice, replied that what she was thinking was quite impossible. The woman, revealed to be Lu Wan, gestured toward her own lovely face, very proudly, announcing that she had used up all of her previous skincare products. She also mentioned that she believed Chin Lee had developed a new kind of special ointment. Turning to those who had used Chin Lee's products, the woman then questioned whether they could afford the price of his new ointment. Those who had once considered themselves victims of Chin Lee's products were now too completely embarrassed to speak. One of the police officers questioned the woman and asked if her claims made over the phone were accurate. Lu Wan asserted her credibility as a real lawyer, handing the police her card and stating that she would never lie. One of the police officers acknowledged Lu Wan's statement and glanced down at her lawyer's card. They assured her that they would thoroughly investigate the matter. The police emphasized that anyone found to be telling lies would face some very legal consequences. Those who had used the ointment were stunned by the police's statement and remained completely speechless. The police suspected the victims were all concealing information and demanded they tell the truth about what had transpired. One of the women, kneeling before the police, pleaded for the opportunity to finally reveal the truth. The woman began to speak and revealed that a man named Tang had provided them with eggs. She continued on telling the truth and added that Tang had offered them a bribe of $100,000 if they accused Chin Li's clinic. Chin Li was not overly surprised to learn that Tang was behind the commotion. On a sunny day at the Tang residence, Tang and Lu Minghao were engaged in a serious chess game. Mr. Tang complimented Lu Minghao's great chess skills and then inquired if he was going to kill that kid. Lu Minghao praised Dr. Tang, remarking on his amazing ability to create an ointment that caused pimples to appear on the women's faces. Within just half an hour, their laughter continued until a sudden doorbell interrupted them. Mr. Tang, curious about the strange visitor, stood up and asked the person outside to tell him who they were. He then peered through the peephole, but the figure outside turned out to be Chin Li. Chin Li, with a single swift kick, sent the front door flying open. The force of his kick sent Mr. Tang tumbling across the floor, his body slamming hard against the wall, leaving Lu Minghao completely stunned by the unfolding scene. Chin Li strode right into the room, his powerful presence filling the space. With a mocking tone, he told Dr. Tang that he had a serious injury and wanted him to take a look. Lu Minghao was truly bewildered because Chin Li was supposed to be in police custody. But here he was. Then Lu grabbed something in his pocket. Chin Li now realized that Lu Minghao was the one responsible for all of the recent commotion. He yelled at him, confirming his suspicions with a pointed gun. He made it very clear he knew the truth. Liang Qin charged toward Lu Minghao, her fist cocked and prepared to strike. Her punch connected right with his face, sending him flying straight backward and causing his body to crash against the wall with a loud thud. With her face and her voice laced with pure anger, she asked Lu Minghao if he was to play with something like a gun. Chin Li advanced toward Lu Minghao, and his approach sent a shiver of fear down Minghao's spine. His voice was both calm and steady, as he assured Lu Minghao that he was simply checking if he was still capable of any movement. After a long day, both Dr. Tang and Lu Minghao were arrested. They were both accused of bribing multiple women and of using counterfeit medications. A police officer acknowledged their previous mistake and apologized to Chin Li for doubting and wrongly accusing him. He assured Chin Li that he would face no further trouble. Chin Li dismissed all their apologies, simply stating that they were only doing their job. Meanwhile, in the back of the police car, Dr. Tang and Lu Minghao sat, listening to the stern lecture from the police officer. As the car carrying the two accused men pulled away, Chin Li suddenly received a text message. The message was from Jiang Chuxiao, informing Chin Li that his new residence was now ready. She apologized for the inconvenience of the villa situation and had reserved a place for him at the Merlin residence. He replied that he had work later that afternoon and would leave the matter of the two men to his assistant, Liang King. Liang King assured him that she would handle the situation. Afterwards, he went to the Zhang residence to discuss the villa with Zhang Chuxiao. The meeting place was bustling with people engaged in conversations. Chin Li arrived at the designated room and knocked on the door. Zhang Chuxiao opened the door and greeted him with a warm welcome. The meeting room was of moderate size, with only Zhang Chuxiao, Chin Li, and a single man who was seated in a chair. She offered Chin Li a cup of French black tea, a new arrival that had been delivered earlier that day, and she would like him to try it. Zhang Chuxiao then handed him a stack of completed files and paperwork pertaining to the villa. He sat down after she handed him the files. She then explained that once he had signed the documents and made the final payment, the villa would officially be his. He took all the files from Chuxiao and expressed his gratitude for her great assistance. Chuxiao introduced Chin Li to Jiang Shi, a representative from the esteemed Jiang Group. Jiang Shi had come specifically to meet with Chin Li, having heard of his arrival, and expressed interest in discussing a potential collaboration. He then bowed politely and greeted Chin Li, while Chin Li was very intrigued. He wondered what kind of cooperation Jiang Shi had in mind. Jiang Shi reintroduced himself and clarified he was a subordinate of Jiang Zhou, just like Chu Xiao. He further explained that he had just been transferred to Yang Cheng to head the Zhang's entertainment program. He also insisted that Chin Li should take care of them in the future, while flashing them a sincere smile. Chin Li politely thanked Zhong Shi for his kindness as they shook hands. However, he could not help but express his own curiosity about the nature of the proposed cooperation. Their conversation flowed smoothly as Chu Xiao poured tea into their cups. Zhang Si explained that he had heard about Chin Li's remarkable invention, an ointment that had successfully healed the facial ailment of Liu Jiang's cousin. This achievement had sparked the Jiang group's interest in collaborating with Qin Li to develop and then market a similar ointment. Meanwhile, Qin Li took a sip of his tea while attentively listening to Zhang Shi's proposal for their collaboration. Zhang Shi spoke with great enthusiasm, confident that Jiang Group's extensive resources and established brands would surely guarantee the ointment's immense success. He further assured Qin Li that, when they had established a company to manufacture and market the new ointment, Qin Li would hold the majority of all the shares. Qin Li was taken aback by the kind offer of majority ownership, feeling both surprised and hesitant to accept such a generous proposition. Mr. Shi was very persistent in his pursuit of Qin Li's collaboration, reiterating his desire to acquire the rights to Qin Li's ointment for production and for marketing under the Jiang Group. He then showed an illustration of the major shares regarding the ointment with Qin Li. As the major shareholder, Jiang Shi fell silent, his gaze completely fixed on Qin Li, pondering whether his persuasive arguments had swayed the inventor. The fact that he addressed Luo Jiang by his own given name, without any formal honorifics, hinted at the Jiang family's significant influence. Their ability to call upon such a powerful figure by name suggested they held a position of considerable authority within Jiang province. Qin Li mused to himself and acknowledged the great truth in Jiang Shi's words. He realized that the Jiang Group's extensive resources and their established network would undoubtedly amplify the ointment's reach and impact. He thought about it carefully and deeply while holding his chin. Junsei observed Qin Li's very thoughtful expression and suspected that the inventor might be hesitant, or perhaps very concerned, that the offered share of the company was insufficient. With a sudden and very deliberate cough, Mr. Shi suddenly signaled over to Chuck Su, seeking her assistance in persuading Qin Li to finally accept the collaboration. Chushio, ever so perceptive, immediately recognized Jiang Shi's silent and desperate plea and swiftly moved to act. She rose up from her seat and extended a formal offer to Qin Li. To compensate for the previous day's large disruption, she proposed that Qin Li accept ownership of the largest casino in Yangqing. Chushio presented the ownership documents to Qin Li, but he politely declined them. He explained that Jiang Shi's gesture was far too grand, and that the previous day's commotion had already been resolved. To his satisfaction, Chushio remained very insistent, hoping to persuade him to accept the generous offer. She believed that his direct refusal would indicate he had not fully forgiven her for the previous day's events, and that Mr. Jiang would also blame her. Qin Li gestured toward the untouched cup of tea before him, a subtle indication of his refusal to accept the offer. Chushio recognized the futility of all her efforts and reluctantly backed down. It was clear that no amount of persuasion would change Qin Li's mind. However, Jiang Shi sensed Qin Li's unwavering and firm stance, and then offered a very different proposition. Jiang Shi, with a very subtle gesture, presented Qin Li with a gleaming golden card. This card, he explained, would grant Qin Li free access to all of Zhang's entertainment establishments. Faced with the unwavering generosity of both Zhang Shi and Zhu Xiu, Qin Li found himself truly unable to refuse. He accepted the gold card with a very grateful nod, acknowledging their persistent efforts to make their amends. A wave of relief washed over both Zhu Xiu and Zhang Shi as they witnessed Qin Li accept their generous offer. Jiang Shi, with a reassuring smile, poured a fresh cup of tea for Qin Li and asked him what he thought about their proposed collaboration. After a brief moment of contemplation, Qin Li proposed a new plan for their collaboration. He suggested that the Jiang Group provide the production line and all the marketing channels, while he would contribute his own expertise. He proposed a 50-50 share split, with Shi holding the shares on his own behalf. Zhang Shi's eyes lit up with excitement at Qin Li's proposal, and happily said that he would bring the contract tomorrow. Chu Chao's phone then buzzed with a message that interrupted the celebratory atmosphere. It was a new notification that a supplier of raw stones would be arriving at the Tianhao Hotel. Later that evening, Qin Li stands up and says that he will not bother her anymore about the business. Later that evening, Qin Li made his way to the warehouse to personally inspect the newly arrived shipment of raw stones. He was holding a bucket that was overflowing with jade stones and let out a weary sigh. The clock then struck midnight, yet Qin Li remained awake, diligently cutting each jade stone in half with a very practiced hand. Exhaustion finally started to catch up with him, forcing him to remove his goggles and let out a weary shout. Qin Li, while scratching his own face, muttered to himself that he had no idea the blood jade was so rare. As he surveyed the many stones, a memory flickered throughout his mind. He remembered a time when he used his own unique ability to discern the true and valuable jade stones from the ordinary ones. With a determined glint in his eye, Chin Li activated his powers. The room pulsed with energy as his abilities surged forward, searching for the distinct aura that only a true jade stone possessed. After a minute of intense and deep concentration, Chin Li's powers finally located a single stone with a unique and very vibrant aura, distinct from all the others. Deep in the Chushio residence, Qin Yin and others anxiously awaited Qin Li's return. The clock had long since struck the hour of midnight, and her worry grew with each and every passing moment. As he stepped right through the doorway, he saw the entire family was gathered in the main room, waiting for his long-awaited return. He then wondered what was going on, for them to wait up for him until midnight, and asked them why they were all still awake. Qin Yan, her own eyes flashing with pure anger, accused Qin Li's new assistant of giving him something that had made him forget about his family. He was still just waiting for someone to enlighten him on what was happening. To drive her own point home, Qin Yan gestured towards the photograph that was spread across the table, hoping they would jog Qin Li's memory and reveal the truth to him. Han Yin Chu, her face contorted with pure rage, pointed a finger at Qin Li and screamed that he was a bastard. Her voice was trembling with anger as she accused Qin Li of betraying her own daughter. She demanded that he leave the Chuk Su family immediately if he continued his supposed infidelity, claiming that his actions were sullying the family's reputation. He then grabbed all the pictures from the table, his own heart pounding hard his chest. His eyes widened in his disbelief as he saw a photograph of himself and his new assistant, Liang Qin, together. As Qin Li stared at all the photographs, Qin Yan's parents and Qin Yan herself all glared at, their faces completely filled with anger and accusation. Zitan, her voice strained with raw emotion, demanded an explanation from Qin Li as she slammed the table. Qin Li, seemingly unfazed by the accusations and anger directed at him, simply asked Zitan where she had gotten the photos. She refused to answer Qin Li's direct question. Instead, she demanded that he identify the woman in the photograph. He explained that the woman in the photo was his assistant, a homeless woman he had rescued after she had been injured. She could have volunteered to work for him at his clinic. He made a call, summoning the aide named Liang Qin, his trusted subordinate. Liang Qin's professional voice confirmed Qin Li was her superior. A stunned silence fell over Qin Yan's family. The woman on the line had just addressed Qin Li as boss. This revelation sent yet another shockwave through them. In less than 10 minutes, the entire conflict evaporated. A bitter wave of shame crashed down upon Kennegan, for they had falsely accused Qin Li of being unfaithful, and the truth was now laid bare. Qin Li then revealed the truth. His aide was an orphan. She was raised from youth by a clandestine organization, with no relatives to her name and nowhere else to turn. Zitan, with newfound composure, spoke up. She declared Qin Li should have revealed his aide's identity sooner. That way, they never would have assumed he was committing betrayal. Qin Yan's mother chuckled nervously, a sound that poorly hid the depth of her embarrassment. She insisted it wasn't a matter of them doubting Qin Li. Qin Li finally sank into the sofa, the tempest of accusations at last beginning to calm. Qin Yan took his hand, suggesting they retreat upstairs to avoid further disturbing her parents' peace. As the two ascended to the second floor, the parents hastily concealed the instruments of interrogation. Their expressions were a tapestry of relief and lingering dread. On the stairs, Qin Li dropped a bombshell on Qin Yan. The mighty Jiang group had officially forged a pact with them. Qin Yan froze, her eyes widening with pure astonishment. The Jiang group, they were the absolute titan of industry in the entire province. This news was nothing short of miraculous. The harrowing night finally receded, giving way to a new dawn. Mr. Z himself arrived at the Chu family estate, presenting the official contract for Qin Yan. He told her that only her signature was needed. Qin Yan put her pen to the binding document, sealing the monumental alliance with the Jiang group. Mr. Z then offered his formal congratulations to Miss Qin Yan, the new CEO of their joint enterprise. Qin Yan accepted the title with great humility. She acknowledged her need for Mr. Z's wisdom in the days ahead, especially regarding the business facets she had yet to master. He seemed genuinely delighted, his soul touched by the tales Qin Yan and Qin Li had previously shared about her. A question hovered on Qin Yan's lips, though she found herself unable to speak it. The sheer elation of bringing joy to another was paralyzing. Her voice then shrank to a mere whisper, asking if the company's launch was the reason why. Qin Li sought out the powerful Zhang Cheng. Mr. Z revealed that Qin Li had once sold a blood jade for an astronomical sum of millions. Mr. Z further clarified that Jiang Zheng had tasked Qin Li with acquiring another priceless blood jade. To the amazement of all, Qin Li had unearthed such a treasure in just a few days. A brilliant sun reigned over the Zhang City airport. Jiang Zheng's eyes found Qin Li in the crowded terminal, and he bellowed his name, his voice piercing the din. Onlookers stared at Jiang Zheng, and whispers spread like wildfire as they wondered about the identity of the man he hailed. His tone was thick with admiration. He voiced his utter astonishment at how quickly Qin Li had located the blood jade. He understood the monumental effort such a feat required. Later, their journey brought them to the Zhang estate. Zhang Jun conveyed to Qin Li that his father had canceled all other appointments, just to properly show his immense gratitude to Qin Li. He then continued his explanation, saying this was the very first time his father was so keen to see someone. Qin Li returned the sentiment with a hopeful grin and replied that he prayed the gemstone would not be a letdown. Yung Yung's powerful father lavished him with the highest praise upon his arrival. He proclaimed his deepest, most sincere thanks, declaring that Qin Li was nothing less than his savior. He was floored by the sheer youth of Qin Li to have already achieved something so extraordinary. Qin Li, with his usual modest demeanor, brushed off the praise, explaining his skills were unrefined, gathered mostly from ancient tomes and texts. After a moment, Jiang Jun, with a crease of concern on his brow, finally brought up the legendary blood jade. That Mr. Qin found a mythical 7-color jade for them was met with utter disbelief. The stone had vanished from the world for ages. It was a miracle. Overwhelmed by his own curiosity, Yung Yung asked if this was the fabled gem from the grand auction, the one valued at an insane $10 billion. His father, his voice quivering with awe, could scarcely process that he was seeing this peerless jade again. He then added that the 7-color jade had last been seen many generations ago. Not until this day. This gem was a treasure beyond measure. It once commanded a king's ransom of $10 billion at auction. Qin Li was truly a godsend to the desperate Zhang family. His finding this divine gem was a debt beyond repayment, a favor that would echo through their family's history. It was a great fortune that Yung Lim treasured the stone he found. A few moments passed, and Qin Li and Yung Yung strolled together down the corridor. As they did, Yung Yung suddenly pivoted the conversation, mentioning the personal quest he'd entrusted to him, the search for his long-lost parents. Zhang had unearthed some promising intelligence regarding the mysterious fate of Qin Li's parents. He also warned that the clues about his lost family may be fragmented or even deliberately falsified. He then cautiously passed the dossier over to him. As Qin Li absorbed the contents of the report, he again stressed the intel might not be reliable. He highlighted one specific detail of great interest, a sighting previously unknown from the records. Qin Li's parents had apparently been seen in Kamagaya a mere 2 years in the past. Qin Li was thunderstruck by Zhang Zhang's stunning news about his parents and demanded to know if it was certain. Zhang Zhang cautioned Qin Li that he had just received this lead and was in the process of seeking verification. Yung vowed to give him updates once he confirmed the report. Qin Li then understood that his personal quest for family would undoubtedly stir up significant trouble for Yung Yung. On a perfect, sun-drenched day, Qin Li and Yung Yung stood within the grand Quanji Hotel. Yung Yung gestured proudly at their surroundings. He revealed that this establishment belonged to his sister, and it was one of the most famous in the entire city. He was also quite excited to introduce Qin Li to the legendary signature dishes of his sister's hotel. As Qin Li and Yung conversed, a young woman from behind them sharply called out to Zhang Zhang. This girl was revealed to be Zhang Zhang's younger sister, Zhang Ran. She was visibly pouting, as her brother had made a vow to take her shopping today, but had clearly forgotten his promise. Yung hurriedly tried to explain, saying he was swept up in the thrill of the blood jade, and it had completely slipped his mind that he had sworn to take his dear sister shopping today. He gestured toward Qin Li and introduced his sibling, but she remained furious about the shattered shopping vow. Qin Li felt a strange sense of familiarity with Zhang Ran's name, but he couldn't recall precisely where he might have heard. Zhang Ran was known as a prodigious young woman who had already launched a wildly successful catering empire and had become a true titan of the city's culinary world. Even though she was just 20, he offered his hand to shake and stated his name. But Zhang Ran completely and utterly snubbed him. Her fury was still laser-focused on her neglectful brother. Zhang Ran demanded they get a private room for their meal, still seething over her brother abandoning their shopping trip. Zhang leaned in and explained in a hushed tone that his sister had a strange sort of aversion to men and possessed absolutely no interest in befriending them. She overheard his whisper, which only fueled her rage, forcing the other two into a terrified silence. Without warning, a large bodyguard charged over to Zhang Ran, shouting that a crisis had just erupted. She rebuked him for his volume, as guests were nearby. The bodyguard quickly clarified that one of the staff was preparing to leap from the roof, a revelation which horrified them all. She immediately bolted for the elevator, calling for police backup. Zhang apologized profusely to Qin Li for the chaos, but Qin Li just told him to remain calm, hinting he might be able to resolve their dire situation. High above on the rooftop, the hotel staff desperately pleaded with the girl to reconsider, but she was deaf to their cries, lost in a malevolent aura. Her foot teetered dangerously over the abyss, threatening to send her plummeting to her doom. Zhang Ren burst onto the roof as the others followed close behind. She tried to reason with the girl, begging her not to jump, offering her anything her heart desired in return. The girl faced her and asked if that promise was truly genuine. Qin Li saw the crimson in her eyes, the sinister energy, and instantly knew this was no ordinary suicide attempt. Zhang Ren, in a panic, dashed toward the edge to physically restrain the desperate girl. She ignored Qin Li's shouted warnings to stay away from her. The possessed girl seized Jiang Ran's wrist and leapt into the void. This caused Ran to stumble and lose her footing as the possessed girl dragged her over the precipice. They were now both in a free fall. Ran reached out desperately, grasping for anything to hold. Qin Li moved like lightning as her brother screamed her name. He managed to snatch both of the girl's hands just in time. He had miraculously saved them both from certain death, though he strained to heave their combined weight to safety. He then yanked them up with too much force, sending them both flying through the air. Tin Li saw Zhang's sister plummeting right toward him. He caught a scandalous glimpse of her underwear for a second, before her knee landed squarely on his vulnerable groin. The impact forced a spray of blood from his mouth, while the other girl landed gracefully on her hands and feet. The possessed girl then lunged to attack them both, while their defenses were completely down. Yung screamed a warning about the incoming assault, so Qin Li instantly deployed his enchanted needle against her, just an instant before she struck the final blow. As the needle purified the evil aura enveloping the girl, she collapsed to the ground, completely unconscious. Qin Li realized that Zhang Ran was blushing and trembling, due to his hands still firmly grasping her waist. She then leapt back from him like a startled cat, and furiously demanded to know why he was touching her. This forced him to awkwardly apologize for his actions. Zhang showered Qin Li with praise for his bravery. He asked how in the world he saved them both like that. Qin Li admitted to Zhang that he sensed trouble earlier, so he was prepared to act in an instant. This only made the others wonder what he had perceived. Qin Li said that the situation was difficult to explain, and that the hotel had a sinister formation placed upon it by a master of the metaphysical arts. Zhang Ren scoffed at his wild assertions, labeling it as nothing more than foolish superstition. But Qin Li insisted it was far more than that the entire building was under a dark curse. This made Zhang Ren furious that he would call her hotel cursed, right after he had just rescued her from death's door. Jiang Jing cut in to stop their squabbling. He voiced his own concerns about these metaphysics users, since such powers were unheard of just a few years ago. As he spoke, Jiang Ran darted over to the unconscious girl. She commanded her staff to summon an ambulance for her. Yung then suggested to Qin Li that they go back inside, but Qin's attention was fixed on something else. Their discussion resumed as they made their way downstairs, but Qin Li's mind still appeared to be elsewhere. He casually searched through his coat pockets. He then subtly dropped a jade gourd into a nearby planter, and finally gave his full attention back to Zhang Jun. As they departed, the gourd began to pulse with a sacred light, its divine power growing even after they had left. A short while later, John Lim escorted an old man to the hotel. He had learned that his daughter was facing dire troubles lately. This mysterious man was known as Master Chang, and he guaranteed Lim that he would resolve the issue. As he stroked his long beard, he suddenly stiffened. A profoundly sinister energy was radiating from the hotel. He gravely warned that the caster of this evil formation was undoubtedly a powerful master of the art. He said only 2 sorcerers in all of Jiangchuan could break it. They stepped inside, and Jiang Ran immediately spotted them. She was on the phone with the hospital about the possessed girl. She demanded to know why her father had brought them here. He explained that a dark shadow had fallen over the hotel, so he summoned Master Chuan to investigate the matter. While the two of them were conversing, Master Chung detected a strange anomaly in a decorative pot. He discovered the very same jade gourd Qin Li had left behind. He asked who could have placed such a thing there. Chung knelt down to get a closer look at the gourd, and then a security officer approached to give his report. He stated that a young man with Zhang Jun dropped. Zhang Ran was startled to hear Qin Li's name invoked yet again, making her wonder what all this commotion was about. Master Chung declared that because of this single gourd, they had all narrowly escaped a truly gruesome demise. But Ran refused to believe him, silently cursing the man. Zhang Lim, however, completely trusted the old master, so he requested that he elaborate on the details. Chung gave his professional opinion, saying, that whoever left this gourd could shatter the formation entirely. They demanded to know where Qin Li was now. But Zhang Ran had no idea. She only knew that June had taken him somewhere else. Her father gave her a direct order to call them at once. She reluctantly obeyed her father's command, completely baffled, still confused about what the big deal was. Sometime later, the two men returned. Zhang Jun immediately asked if a new problem had arisen, since they had been urgently summoned back to the hotel. His father explained that Master Chung had arrived and uncovered the true source of the hotel's curse, but also had a few questions for Qin Li himself. Chung began by saying he felt the hotel's foul energy and knew that something was terribly wrong. After a thorough search, he found the gourd Qin Li planted. Qin Li calmly confirmed that it was his. The very same jade gourd he placed in the pot himself. Young Jun asked what was so special about the gourd, but Chung just let out a booming laugh, praising Qin Li for his incredible foresight in averting a great tragedy. Jiang Lim surmised that Li placed the gourd to quell the formation, so there should not be any more accidents from now on. But Qin Li warned him the danger had not yet passed. He clarified that he had only placed the gourd as a temporary measure to suppress the malevolent energy, since he traced the source of the curse to that very pot. They ascended to the roof again, and he told them that this specific spot was the formation's weakest link. He then requested a few coins from the old master, to which he happily and eagerly obliged. After gathering the proffered coins, Qin Li hurled them high into the air, now glowing with his spiritual power. He sensed a torrent of deadly energy erupting from the coins, and it swirled violently around them. As Qin Li poured more and more of his power into the coins, the vengeful spirits coalesced into a single, terrifying, and powerful wraith. Master Chung never imagined that such a vicious formation could manifest as a true demonic entity, a fact that filled them all with pure terror. Just before the entity could overwhelm them, Qin Li ferociously plunged his sacred dagger into the ground, which instantly caused the spirits to be exorcised. As a powerful gust of wind washed over the rooftop, Qin Li let out a weary sigh, his great work now done. He then informed the others that the poor woman who tried to leap from the building should now be completely healed, as he casually sheathed his dagger. Both Master Chung and Zhang lauded him for his skill, for once more saving Zhang Ran's hotel from total ruin. Zhang Li then whispered that Qin Li should ignore the harsh words his daughter had spoken, as she was simply known for her fiery temper. Qin Li grew a bit flustered and merely nodded his head, avoiding her gaze after the whole embarrassing incident. Both Jun and Li then traveled to the Ming Palace to better acquaint themselves with the local area. They entered the establishment and requested a table, which made the hotel's on-duty manager quite agitated. Upon recognizing Zhang Jun, the manager quickly apologized, stating they couldn't seat them as the palace was booked solid. This excuse made Jun narrow his eyes in suspicion. He harshly rebuked the manager, knowing perfectly well that there were rooms still empty. He accused the man of attempting to deceive him. The manager pleaded that he was ordered not to bother the guests, but a red-haired man strode in and cut him off mid-sentence. This newcomer's name was Zhou Sui, a scion from a powerful family who also knew Jiang Jun. Zhang sneered that he had been curious about what kind of pathetic loser booked an entire restaurant, only to discover it was the insufferable Zhao. Sui immediately fired back at his insults, mocking him for associating with common street trash, saying he could only act tough in a backwater like Zhangchang. Zhang's playful demeanor vanished after this taunt. He questioned if his opponent had such an inflated ego, because he thought his family name meant something in Shenzhen. Sui gave a razor-sharp reply that at the very least, their family had status and renown in Shenzhen, unlike the Zhang family, who were constantly being exiled. Zhang Jun finally lost his temper, daring him to repeat the insult. He reminded him that he was the one who hospitalized him just 1 year ago. Qin Li wondered just how powerful Jun was to have beaten such a foe. As he watched the tense confrontation unfold, Zhu started the brawl by unleashing a deadly kick, proclaiming that he was no longer the weakling from last year. Zhang Jun deflected the blow with both of his arms, but the raw power still sent him skidding backward, even though he successfully blocked the attack. He understood that his rival had truly grown stronger after weathering such a ferocious opening strike, so he decided to charge in and finish the fight quickly. Sui also rushed forward, vowing he wouldn't stop this time, not even if he groveled on the floor for mercy. He then skillfully dodged his opponent's strikes, as he continued to heap insult after insult on the Zhang family. He declared that he would help the Zhao family obliterate them, as he threw his fist directly toward Jun's face. A thunderous crack echoed throughout the room. Sui was sent soaring into a table, completely destroying it. As he crashed, Zhang Jin saw that Qin Li had amazed him again. He saw his friend's figure wreathed in an overwhelming aura. He wondered why Qin Li was such a master of combat, despite the fact he wasn't even a professional warrior. Zhao Sui was shocked that Jun had such a powerful ally. He believed that this man was as strong as his own cousin, who was a veteran just back from the army. He chose to make a tactical retreat, telling Zhang Jun he got lucky because he had brought an outsider to the fight to protect him and promised their battle was not yet over. As he stormed out of the restaurant, after Zhou's departure, Zhang Jun thanked Qin Li profusely for his help, but Qin Li just humbly replied that he couldn't simply stand by and watch him be injured. Zhang then cheerfully invited him for a meal, since he had a plane to catch later that same day. He also confessed he booked his sister on the same plane, since she was heading to Yangsheng to meet a friend. But Qin Li saw through his matchmaking and cursed him. After their meal, he successfully made his flight on time, as he was casually flipping through a magazine. Zhang Ran strode by, and her eyes locked with his. Qin Li offered a nervous and awkward greeting, as she demanded to know why they were always meeting. She quickly rushed to her seat, trying to avoid him, but then a stranger's hand touched her inappropriately, which caused her to freeze in place for a brief moment. As a stewardess came over to ask what was the matter, she angrily gestured toward the offending man and declared to the attendant that she was being harassed. The disgusting man claimed that it was just a simple touch, as he then proceeded to also grope the flight attendant. The pilot intervened, ordering the man to apologize at once. He gave him a final warning that they would call the police and ban him from flying. But then, without warning, a hooded figure aimed a gun at the captain's head. The masked man praised the pervert, Lao San, for his act, revealing that the two of them were accomplices. The criminals then terrorized all the passengers aboard, screaming at them to put their valuables in a bag or die. Zhang Ran trembled with fear as this nightmare unfolded. She was then suddenly pulled back from behind. Her expensive sunglasses clattered to the floor. It was Qin Li who had silently grabbed her. He commanded her to remain completely silent. They then slipped into the restroom to conceal themselves. Qin Li ran a stern order to lock the door and hide. He prepared to leave, and she asked what he planned to do. He replied with cold confidence, "I will stop the robbers." Ran questioned why he would ever confront armed thugs, and told him that it would be much smarter to just give them their money, which made him scowl in annoyance. Back outside the bathroom, Lao San was grumbling that they hadn't found even one wealthy passenger on the entire flight. Suddenly, a small child began to wail directly in front of him. He leveled his gun at the helpless infant and threatened to kill him if he didn't stop crying. Before he could carry out his threat, Qin Li moved like a phantom and delivered a powerful blow directly into the surprised robber's face, which launched the man backward into the seats. The other hijacker yelled for his partner to get up, while keeping the terrified pilot in a chokehold. But he got no response. He then scanned the plane for the attacker. He screamed that he would kill the pilot if anyone moved. This put Qin Li in a very difficult situation, since an innocent hostage's life was on the line. Just as the robber was about to pull the trigger, Qin Li charged forward to attack with his bare hands, and a deafening gunshot ripped through the plane as blood flew. By some miracle, Qin Li was only shot in the shoulder. So, Zhang Ran tended to his wound, scolding him for risking his life. The flight attendant expressed her eternal gratitude to him, saying they'd all be dead if not for her heroic boyfriend. Zhang Ran's face turned crimson as she insisted he was not her boyfriend, while looking completely and utterly flustered. After the plane touched down, the police apprehended the thugs. The two of them walked out of the plane, and Zhang Ran asked Qin Li about his next destination. He told her that he was, of course, heading home, since he had, after all, just been shot. Yang Ran then replied, asking him to look after her tomorrow, as she was totally unfamiliar with the Yangqing area. This annoyed him, and he finally understood why June seemed so stressed. Time flowed onward after they went their separate ways. Qin Li was now at his clinic with his loyal assistant. She was expertly treating his fresh gunshot wound. She mentioned that it was quite extraordinary that he had defeated an armed man with only his fists, though he calmly just accepted her high praise. He then asked her a question, if she wished to locate her comrades, as they might still live. Liang Qing shuddered when she heard his unexpected question, and asked him to explain what he was implying, to which he just replied that he could assist her search. She then asked if she could truly see them once more, to which he gave her his solemn and unbreakable vow. Afterward, she went to find the personal files of her old team, to give him all the help he would need. While Qin Li observed that she had finally begun to cry, and he mused that even she had a vulnerable human side. Liang Qing retrieved the secret documents she had hidden for so long from within a heavily secured briefcase. She then presented the precious files to Chin Li, as he swore that he would do his utmost to find them. After receiving treatment for his wounds at the clinic, he returned to his extravagant villa to recuperate. Inside the mansion, Chin Yin was typing away at her laptop. She saw that her husband had finally returned home, so she offered him a warm and enthusiastic welcome. Chin Li sat next to her, saying he was worried about her, as she was toiling so much for the new company. But she assured him that she was doing perfectly fine, and proceeded to show him some incredible news. As he leaned over to look at her laptop, he noticed something truly remarkable. It was the astonishing sales figures of their trial products. He gently patted her head, praising her excellent work. She also gave him thanks for her new company and purpose. She then mentioned a business meeting in Yangsheng, scheduled for the very next afternoon. But she dreaded seeing the person who had summoned her, since it was none other than her old, arrogant boss. Chin Li asked her if she really had to go to it, to which she replied that it was crucial she attend, since it was a prime opportunity to forge connections, though she still fretted that she would face hardships if she traveled to this important meeting by herself. So he teased her with a lighthearted question. Was she still feeling insecure, thinking the John Group was inferior to the Sky Eagle Company, to which she gave a passionate denial. Chin Li then told her to cast aside her worries, as he would be accompanying her on this trip. After some time had passed, Chin Li prepared for sleep while his wife was showered. Unseen, he was using his power to heal his injury, which was now very nearly fully mended. Chin Yin opened the door to the bathroom when she was done, and immediately saw the terrible wound her husband had received. She rushed to his side, her face etched with concern, but Chin Li simply brushed off her worries, saying it was merely a very small wound. Chin Yin insisted that he be more careful from now on, since her father was still eager for them to have a child. Chin Li became completely flustered, and he stammered, unable to respond to what she just said. He was secretly thrilled by the idea of starting a family. He quickly changed the subject, asking if she liked girls, because of the scandalous incident from just a while ago. She clarified that she was just intensely afraid of men, because of a senior she once adored before meeting Chin Li. She had nearly lost her life due to that awful experience. That same senior was later sent to prison for other crimes. So after that, she swore to only ever love other girls. But she was then betrayed by another woman as well. Chin Li took her hands after hearing her tragic history, and he swore a solemn oath to never let anyone hurt her again. Deeply moved by his heartfelt vow, Chin Yin apologized for how she had treated him until now. As she panicked, thinking of how to atone to her husband, Chin Li softly told her to let go of all the painful things that had happened before, and to look to the future, as he gently pushed her onto the bed. He then switched off the light, plunging them into darkness. Later in the night, as the insects chirped outside, the husband and wife were locked in a close embrace. Chin Yin urged him to rest because of his fresh wounds. So she finally relents to their union, asking him to be gentle. And thus, for the very first time, they spent the night as one. Their two hearts were at last beating in perfect unison. A new dawn broke after their night locked in a lover's embrace, while the gardener cleared away the wreckage left outside from the powerful gales that had raged the night before. The pair readied themselves for their first morning meal. Chin Li offered his assistance with all the household chores. His face was a portrait of pure, unadulterated bliss, but she declined his offer, stating she could manage it all herself, as her bashful gaze refused to lock with his own after the intimate night they had just shared together. So he instead reminded her of their scheduled exchange meet. Later that day, before they would go out for a meal, the two of them then departed for the bustling city. Chin Yin asked Chin Li their purpose at a car showroom, so he began to explain his reasoning. He said their future would involve much more traveling, so owning their own vehicle was a necessity. His eyes then fell upon an impressive vehicle, prompting her to ask if he desired that one, to which he admitted his lifelong desire for an off-road car, a dream since his youth. So he reached to inspect the inside, but a voice suddenly commanded him to halt his actions. The man was identified as an employee of the dealership. He berated him for daring to touch the vehicle, wrongfully judging that Chin Li could not afford. Chin Li offered an apology, despite the man's condescension. He then asked if a test drive of the car was possible. The salesman smugly replied to his simple request by demanding a substantial deposit be paid first, as insurance in case he damaged the vehicle, because it was a highly sought-after collector's model. So Chin Li inquired about the cost of this deposit, to which the arrogant salesman gave his reply, stating the original price was a steep $80,000, but for him, he would graciously offer it for $60,000. This absurd demand stunned Chin Li. The amount the salesman required was half the car's price, even though he merely wished to test the machine. The salesman insisted this was the store's standard policy, while internally plotting to shame and disgrace him, believing him to be nothing but a pauper. Qing Yin saw the disdain in the salesman's eyes. She suggested to Qin Li that they should simply leave because of the employee's incredibly disrespectful attitude. She said they could easily just visit the next dealer, to which he immediately gave his full agreement. The salesman then spat insults at their departing backs, muttering that they were too poor to buy anything, so visiting the next establishment would be pointless. As he continued to mock and belittle the young couple, his co-workers suddenly shouted out his name and informed him that the very same couple had indeed crossed the street to a rival dealer. This revelation truly shocked him, so he decided to watch them see what would happen. The showroom they entered was the new Bugatti dealership. Inside, a courteous manager gave them a warm greeting. He suggested a model called the Aventador for $800,000. He even graciously offered a test drive free of charge. The arrogant salesman from before yelled at the other manager, a man named Juan, for letting the couple touch the car, and falsely claimed they couldn't even afford a car for $100,000, to which Juan simply just shrugged his shoulders. He informed him that they always serve every single customer. Qin Li was now seething from the salesman's constant insults. He asked him why he believed he couldn't purchase the car. He then decided to buy the Aventador with his golden card, paying the entire amount in full. He told the manager he didn't even need a test drive. Manager Wong eagerly took his payment and led him to the VIP lounge, while the other salesmen stared at the golden card, stunned, as they were escorted into the VIP lounge. They left the smug salesman behind, his face a mask of shame. One then thanked him for sending over such a huge client, deepening the salesman's utter and total humiliation. Night fell after the bitter conflict with the car salesman, and the two finally made their way to the Huangta building. They entered the grand venue dressed in expensive attire, which had been personally selected by King Yin. As they happily walked through the grand ballroom, his cellular phone began to ring loudly. It was John Rand calling about their forgotten appointment, a meeting which he had totally forgotten. So he told his wife to wait there as he needed to take a call, to which she gave her quick approval. He then went to answer the call in a more private location. After he received his wife's permission, after stepping into an empty restroom stall, he informed Zhang Ran he was at the exchange meet and asked her what it was she required. She raged at him for failing to pick her up, so he told her he was at the Huangtu building's peak. He then told Ms. Zhang, who had just appeared there, to go get her, as he was still new to the area. She then asked who she was meant to go and collect, to which he replied that her name was Zhang Ranrong, who was at this moment waiting on the second floor. This information made her rush there immediately, worried why the young mistress was at the Huangta building, without the family having any prior knowledge. Back at the party, while King Yin spoke with other guests, she was abruptly accosted by a familiar face, who feigned surprise at her very presence. It was none other than her former boss, who immediately berated her for her flashy attire and accused her of scheming to entrap wealthy men. While the boss herself was dressed in a tacky outfit, King Yin then calmly warned her former superior, whom she called Director Liu, to watch her words. This caused the heavy-set director to draw near her and slapped King Yin hard for her perceived insolence. She then roared at her to get out of her sight, screaming that King Yin had no authority to command her and that she shouldn't get so full of herself just because she had quit her previous position. Qin Li returned to the scene and demanded to know the issue. Director Liu knew him as King Yin's useless, lazy husband and told him he needed to control his disrespectful wife. He then asked her if she had struck King Yin, to which she brazenly confessed while mocking him. So he unleashed a fist, striking her squarely in retaliation, sending her reeling backward and crashing onto the floor. Qin Li's eyes burned with fury for the assault on his wife, as she writhed dramatically on the floor, playing the victim and wailing that she was being attacked. A bald man rushed to the fat woman's side to ask what had occurred. Director Liu told the bald man, a man named Chun, that Qin Li had attacked her. This caused Chun to rebuke King Yin for her husband violence and ordered her to kneel down and beg for forgiveness. Qin Li stepped in to protect her, telling the man that Director Liu should be the one to apologize, since she was the person who had first struck King Yin, and that she was no longer with Sky Eagle Company. Chun warned her not to get too arrogant, just because she had launched a small, new company. He then boasted that Sky Eagle had a deal with the Zhang Company, so they had better not anger him any further. But then, Zhang Rand made a sudden appearance. She asked him to clarify what he had just said about their two companies having an alliance. Director Liu shouted at her for interfering in their business, completely ignorant that she was the young miss of the Zhangs. Chuck Su interrupted and revealed to Director Liu that she was, in fact, speaking to a Zhang family member, which made the two conspirators extremely nervous, after they had just insulted the powerful young woman. As the scene unfolded, Director Liu attempted to reintroduce herself as a Sky Eagle director and Chun as her trusted manager, but Chu Xiao completely ignored their formal introductions. She asked if they were the ones who had insulted Jiang Ran, to which the director vehemently denied. She insisted it was all a giant misunderstanding. She claimed that Chun-Li was the real source of the conflict because he was the one who had struck her manager. Chen agreed and demanded Chushio remove the couple. Chushio then asked them which company they represent. They replied that they were proud members of Sky Eagle. He then made an announcement. The contract between their firms would be immediately terminated. The John Group would pay any fees for the contract breach. This declaration absolutely floored the two culprits. They wondered why she had chosen to punish them so harshly instead of the troublesome couple. Chuxiu clarified that her judgment was not mistaken at all, since they had dared to insult Miss Jiangran, the second biggest shareholder of the Jiang Group in the city. Not to mention, she was a very dear friend of Qin Li, of whom he was immensely proud. Manager Chun was in disbelief that Qin Li was a major Jiang shareholder, as she had once been his direct subordinate. She instantly regretted ever helping the wicked director. Zhang Run, enraged by the disrespect from these outsiders, demanded Chu Xiu handle these two deplorable individuals. So Chuxiu immediately ordered them to get out. She warned if they refused, they would be dragged out. Zhang Ran felt a surge of pride after coming to his rescue. So he offered her his sincerest thanks for her assistance, as she elegantly picked up a wine glass. She flirtatiously asked Qin Li to pour her a glass, if he was truly sincere in his desire to thank her. But Qin Li's wife interrupted her romantic advances by offering to pour the glass for her instead. As thanks for what she had just done, Zhang Ran then asked who this woman was, as she gripped her hand. So Qin Li introduced Qin Li as his beloved wife, which made the two women share a venomous glare, as they both realized the other's feelings for Qin Li. Qin Li's wife then snatched the wine glass from Zhang Ran, refusing to allow her to pour the wine herself. Though Zhang Ran continued to stubbornly insist, Qin Li's wife stated she wished to thank her personally on the behalf of her dear husband. This completely ruined her grand plans to seduce Qin Li. Qin Li sensed the palpable tension between the two. He knew he had to flee if he wished to live to see tomorrow, so he attempted to make his great escape. But the two women ordered him not to go anywhere. This forced him to retreat to the restroom as an excuse, so they couldn't possibly stop him as he headed for the exit. Feeling deeply troubled by the two rival women, Chushu suddenly broke his train of thought by playfully suggesting Qin Li was actually scared of him. He claimed that he truly just didn't understand why the two of them were being so hostile to each other. So she teased him once more by saying that it was because he was simply too exceptional. This made him shake his head in utter disapproval. Qin Li then deftly changed the subject. He told her he had something to give to Zhang Jun. He then presented her with a data drive and made a very specific request for Zhang Jun to find the people on the drive. He then added that the files on the drive were highly classified and extremely important to him. So Chu Chu thanked Qin Li for placing his trust in her, and she promised that she would do as he had asked. Then she began to tease him yet again by asking if he was ever planning to go back to the banquet, to which he replied that he would return in a few moments. After the meeting concluded, he and his wife drove home in their brand new vehicle. Qin Li asked Qin Yin what she and Zhang Ran discussed. She began her reply by saying that Zhang Ran had told her how Qin Li had wronged her, to which he immediately denied, telling her not to listen. Qin Yin then admitted she had just been teasing him. Zhang Ran only said that Qin Li still owed her a meal, while concealing the fact that she knew Zhang Ran also had developed a crush on him. He then explained that the young mistress of the Zhangs had come to Yangxin just to meet her close friend, but he never imagined things would become so complex. Qin Yin said that she also heard this from Zhang Ran. Zhang Ran also asked her to go on a business trip there. Qin Li asked her how she felt about this proposal. She replied that she was currently still undecided, but she knew it could be a great new opportunity for them. He then told her that he was also uncertain about it. This led Qin Yin to ask him what his plans were, and if he could join her on the trip to Yangshang, to which he replied he would go if that was her wish. After he had concluded his duties at the clinic, as they neared the Grand Villa, they saw Zitong sitting patiently on the porch. She was playing on her phone while waiting for their return. Zitong saw them arrive and jumped up to greet the two. After that, they all went together into the house. Ziton was awestruck by the villa her brother-in-law owned. She found it hard to believe her own eyes. This earned her a light tap on the head from Qin Yin for addressing Qin Li with such disrespect, as he was pouring them each a refreshing drink. Ziton asked him for a favor, calling him brother-in-law, which made him overjoyed after so many long years of being spoken to with such rudeness. She then marveled at his new and extravagant lifestyle. She asked him how he managed to afford such a place, to which he just said he had found a very good job. He then inquired as to why she had come to see them, which caused her to recall that she had originally come here for a favor. She brought up his prior vow to her to join her at the sorority meeting in a few days. She said she had looked for him for the last few days, but he was always extremely busy. Qin Li recalled the vow, thinking it was just a joke, so she asked if he would truly accompany her now. She was worried that her old bullies might seek revenge. He then strongly suggested she shouldn't even go, but she refused, saying she couldn't hide like a coward. Chinyin also voiced her opinion and said that he needed to keep the promise he made. So Chin Li at last gave his consent, as he was unable to find another way out of it. Shin pouted at his obvious lack of enthusiasm, as her older sister tried to comfort her. She then complained that Shin Li didn't seem to mind, before she was feeling a little bit hurt. While she secretly thought to herself that she was acting mad, Shin Li tried to cheer her up by inviting her to cook, to which she gave an enthusiastic and happy yes. This successfully cheered her up, and she requested pork ribs. A month went by, and it was finally time to go to Zhang. Chung Chingyun waited for her husband by the busy clinic, while Chin Li stood inside, watching his aide. Liang Kame was diligently doing her work. He debated if he should bring up her missing comrades. He tried to begin a new conversation, but she quickly cut him off by asking what would become of the clinic once he was gone. So Chin Li told her not to have any worries, since some famous Chinese physicians would soon take over the clinic. He also told her he had someone searching for her comrades, and that he would tell her immediately if he should receive any new information on them. This caused Liang Chung to thank him for his great kindness. Chin Li then gave her the keys to his villa to live in while he was away, and vowed to bring her to Zhangcheng after he had completed all his preparations there. She tried to refuse, feeling that she was in his debt, but he was firm about giving her the house keys. He explained that he viewed her as a true friend, so he was not owed any favors or debts from her. Zhang Yun then called out to him from the street, saying that it was time for them to depart, or else they might end up missing their flight. So Chin Li prepared to make his grand exit. He told her to call him if she should need anything. She waved her farewell, feeling hopeful from his words. And so, the couple set off for their new villa in Jiangcheng. As the moving service brought their belongings inside, the pair then welcomed Zhang Jun into their new abode, who congratulated them on finally making the move. Qinyan thanked him for his help with their relocation, to which he gave a very humble reply. He said it was the very least he could do for Chin Li, whom he now considered to be his own brother, and that they were also partners with the Zhang group, so they should not worry about such trivial matters. Chin Li told him that they were in his debt, which made Zhang Jin chuckle at his excessive politeness. He told him to just speak to him casually, because the two of them were now true brothers. As he casually slung his arm around his shoulders, Zhang Jin said he had a meeting with one of Chin Li's colleagues and wished to introduce the two of them. So Chin Li told his wife he had a meeting to go to which she replied she would organize their new house while he was away on his business. Both Zhang Jin and Chin Li then left for the meeting. After they had arrived at the famous Ming Palace, Zhang Jin told him the man he would meet was highly respected, a very well-known doctor in the Zhangcheng area, who had just opened a massive new medical facility. He said he had arranged for them to meet, since Chin Li wanted to open his own clinic there, but he then warned him of a potential problem, to which Chin Li asked what the problem might be. Jiang Zhen revealed this doctor had courted his sister, but was rejected, and all because of Chin Li. This news left him totally bewildered. He then explained Jiang Ran had boasted of Chin Li, so the doctor now had some very high expectations. They then entered the extravagant meeting room. They saw Zhang Jin's sister and the famous doctor. Jiang Ran gave a cheerful greeting to Chin Li. He then went over to greet the other doctor, who asked if he was the one admired by Jiang Ran. After the handsome doctor confirmed Chin Li was the one, he began to talk down to him for his simple look, seeing that the doctor was so unimpressed with him. Chin Li wondered what Jiang Ran had said about him. As he wondered what she told the doctor Xiao Wenbao, the man boasted about all his great achievements, making everyone else feel awkward with his arrogance. He even claimed to have cured the U.S. president of a tumor, but Yung Ran quickly cut him off. She said he shouldn't assume he was better than him. She told him he still had much to learn from others, which completely shattered his pride, enraging him. But the ring of his phone abruptly stopped him, so he furiously yelled at the person on the line for disturbing him during his personal time off. But the caller said the patient in room 903 was in a critical state and needed him now, so he got ready to leave for the clinic at once. As he said his farewells to the powerful Zhang family, Zhang Ran stopped him in his tracks for a moment. She asked if they could all come along with him, so that she could show off Chin Li's medical skill. He doubted his skill, but Zhang Ran persuaded him by promising she would be greatly impressed if he could handle the emergency all by himself. Otherwise, he was to never bother her ever again. Chin Li was completely taken aback. He had realized he was being used to get rid of the doctor, but there was nothing at all he could do about it, so he simply went along with it. They went to his clinic, where Dr. Zia immediately asked his assistant if the patient had taken a medicine he gave him. The nurse told him that the patient was close to death, which angered the gangsters that surrounded her. A huge man who looked like a gorilla shoved her away. He then approached Dr. Zia with a menacing look. The other thugs swarmed the doctor as he yelled to stop. The gorilla man then roared right at him for letting the young master's health get this bad. He grabbed his collar and raged at the doctor, for failing to keep his promise to cure the illness. Alzira tried to de-escalate the tense situation, but the gorilla man didn't listen and just attacked him, yelling that he would teach him a lesson for his lies. Before his powerful attack could connect, he was stopped by none other than Chin Li, who told him that if he attacked the doctor now, it would be a disaster for his young master, as no other doctors would be around to treat him. The gorilla man then turned his rage on Chin Li, assuming he was just another friend of the doctor. But Chin Li ignored his angry words and just said that this was a perfect opportunity. The gorilla asked what kind of opportunity he meant, to which Chin Li said the patient's fate was not sealed, so it was best for the doctor to examine him first. After hearing his words, the gorilla saw his point, so he released his death grip on the doctor. Dr. Saya felt utterly and completely humiliated after being so helpless in front of the calm Chin Li. But the gorilla man interrupted his spiraling thoughts. He threatened to personally beat him up if he didn't examine the young master properly, and so they all entered the sick patient's room. As the gorilla man stood watch over them, Chin Li also took a long look at the patient. He knew that this illness was extremely complex. He could not sense any vital energy within him. He felt that something crucial was missing, so he moved in closer to the nearly dead man. Meanwhile, Sha was nervous while checking the patient, due to the huge gangster looming right behind him. He tried his best to calm his own racing heart. He told himself that he had faced this before. But Chin Li's voice suddenly broke the silence, startling him, so Sha scolded him for the interruption. Chin Li then grabbed and stopped his hand. He warned him he would kill the patient if he continued. He indicated a large lump in the patient's neck, which he then quickly showed to the other men. Dr. Shia was shocked by the sight of the lump. He wrongly believed that it was a massive tumor, so he told them all that they must replace all the affected internal parts. As he was talking, the patient let out a groan of pain. Chin Li began to prepare for his treatment, while the gorilla man screamed at Sia. He said the patient could no longer be saved, but Chin Li thought that he was wrong, so he told the two to help him restrain the patient. Both the gorilla and the doctor rejected his idea, and they continued to complain and whine. So Chin Li roared at them to be quiet and do as he said. And so he began his delicate treatment of the patient, even as the pale moon rose high in the night sky, as he skillfully struck the vital pressure points to cure the man, narrowly avoiding all the fatal points. He stayed completely focused to heal the dying man. After some time of treating the ill young master, he finally managed to return him to a stable state. He told them the patient would awaken in a few minutes. Afterward, he would just need some special medicine. Dr. Sia was stunned by the result of Chin Li's work. He saw the patient's health was now back to normal. As the patient slowly began to open his eyes, he called out the name of a Mr. Kong, who was crying tears of joy to see his master awake. Kong then told them that they were in Chung Hospital, and that Chin Li was the man who had saved him. The young master called him Master Chin, asking why he was here, as he seemed to recognize Chin Li from somewhere. Chin Li asked why he addressed him with that name. The young master offered a quick apology. He believed he mistook Chin Li for a friend he once met in the city of Shanzhou. This confused Chin Li, as he had heard that name before. Kong then asked if the young master was now healed, to which Chin Li replied to him saying that his illness would be trivial if given some remedies. After he was given his medical file, the gorilla man handed Chin Li the medical record. While offering his deepest thanks, Chin Li thought he might find a clue in Shanjing, as he signed off on all the medical documents, while Xia was in the background, trying to hire him to be an assistant doctor. But Chin Li flatly refused his generous offer. He told him his own clinic still needed a chief physician, which made Xia cough up a mouthful of blood from a shock of his swift and blunt rejection. The young master then thanked Chin Li again, to which he politely accepted the man's high praise. He also asked Kong to book a private room for him, so he could stay in Zhangcheng when he recovered, to which he gave his immediate compliance. He also invited Chin Li to a private party, though Chin Li did not give a clear reply yet. As they made their way back to the villa, Zhang Chong told him he had saved a great man today. He explained the man he saved was from the Exu family, which was a very powerful clan in Shanjing, just like the esteemed Zhang family. Though they were betrayed and cast out of Shanjing, they asked Chin Li to find him a blood jade for the old master's grand party next week. But he then fell deathly ill. He then said he did not want to bother him further, since their family was currently in a dire state. But Chin Li reminded him that they were brothers. Zhang Chong confirmed the meaning behind his words, so Chin Li vowed that he would cure the old master to help him mend their broken relationship. This declaration made Zhang Chong truly happy, so he told Li in return that he had also reached out to a cosmetics CEO to assist him and his wife. 3 days after the hospital, Chin Li came to the Heavenly Palace for the party. Inside, crowds of people were celebrating wildly. Tu Xiao expressed his gratitude to Chin Li for the save. He proclaimed that thanks to him, he could now enjoy this celebration with everyone. He offered a celebratory toast to Chin Li as he raised his glass high in the air. Qin Li told him that he was flattered, but also warned him to drink in moderation, since his body was still in a state of recovery. But Xiao completely ignored his sage advice. He said he had absolutely nothing to worry about, because his savior, Qin Li, was right there. He then leaned in and asked if he knew who he was, to which Qin Li just said he was a patient to him. This earned him a nod of respect from Xiao, who declared that they were now true friends. Because of Qin Li's casual attitude toward him, Zhao's friend called them over to join in on the fun, as it was rare for the young master to party. But a person came flying through a door near them. A hulking man then stepped through the door. He asked if the man he threw was a friend of Xiao, accusing him of having spilled his expensive wine. The man denied it, claiming it was not his fault. Xiao tried to resolve the issue, asking what happened. The white-haired man then informed him that his friend had violated the rules of their gang, so they would now beat up everyone associated with him. The others recognized the name of the powerful gang, which made them nervous. This was a fearsome group that held a great deal of power. Even though the Jiang family appeared to rule the city, it was rumored that even the mighty Jiangs feared them, despite them being just a shadowy underground gang. The reason for this fear was their martial prowess. They were martial artists who wielded dark powers, so no sane person would ever dare to cross them. From the serious gang's chilling threats, while the culprit behind the spilled drink groveled for his life, offering to pay for the expensive wine he had dropped. Xiao also offered to pay the debt for his friend. He asked what price they demanded for their continued safety. The gang members considered his proposition for a moment, before erupting into a cascade of mocking laughter, wrongfully assuming their gang was in need of money. The white-haired man flashed a wicked grin and offered a deal. Since Xiao wished to take responsibility for his friend, Xiao demanded to know what it was. The man replied that if Xiao took a single punch for him, they would let the matter drop. This offer troubled Xiao. He knew now that they only craved violence. Suddenly, Qin Li stepped forward, asking to take the punch himself. This completely stunned Xiao, who thought Qin Li had fled. Qin Li calmly told Xiao to move back, fearing that he might be caught in the blast. He declared the serious gang was merely testing their mettle, so it would not be a difficult challenge. After bracing himself, Qin Li dared the white-haired man to strike, which he did without hesitation, leaping through the air. He unleashed a devastating attack, pulsing with dark energy, aimed directly at Qin Li's vulnerable face. But Qin Li masterfully deflected the incoming blow. He skillfully evaded it by using his own immense power. The white-haired man was shocked to see Qin Li also wielding dark energy, so he struck out once more. He snarled that merely dodging was not enough. But this time, Qin Li's hand shot out, seizing his fist and halting the strike. The white-haired man then decided to unleash his true power. Upon confirming that Qin Li was a fellow martial artist, he readied himself to launch a full-powered assault. Qin Li did the same, angered by his constant taunts. Their fists met in a clash of a tiger and a dragon, as raw power exploded outward from the force of their blows. Xiao at last ended the duel by revealing his identity as a Kashi. This revelation immediately stopped the white-haired man, since he desired no conflict with that powerful family. So the white-haired man chose to de-escalate the fight. He declared to Xiao that their battle was now concluded. Xiao then requested that he keep his identity a secret, to which the man gave his respectful agreement. The white-haired man then praised Qin Li's fighting style. He asked him from where he had learned it, but Qin Li just claimed he was an ordinary doctor, who simply exercised a great deal. The man laughed at this lie. He offered him a position in the powerful serious gang. He told him to visit if he ever had an interest. After the gang departed, Xiao also praised Qin Li. He said he never expected him to be such a warrior. But Qin Li replied that the man had just held back, which only made him appear to be more powerful. Xiao chuckled at his incredible modesty. He informed him he would return to Shanjing soon, since he had been gone for quite some time. He invited Qin Li to come and visit him in the future, to which Qin Li agreed as the night grew ever darker. Qin Li made his way back to his grand new mansion. A call came from Jiang Jun, a reminder of their capital trip. Qin Li asked why he was calling him this early, as 3 more days remained until they were to leave. Jiang replied they needed to make preparations in advance. Qin Li then asked what their departure time would be, and Jiang Jun told him it would be tomorrow at dawn. Qin Li hung up the call, then gazed at the jade balls. He wondered why Zhang Jin was so anxious about this trip. As he placed the smooth balls down on the table, he realized that he hadn't trained his skills in a while. After his recent battle with the white-haired man, he began his intense training regimen. He thought back to the old man who taught him his arts. He had been able to amass a great fortune with them, but he also suspected the old man gave him this power for another purpose, and he still did not know who had taken his parents, or just how powerful they were. He resolved to become stronger to achieve his goals. The next morning arrived at the Qin Li family home. Zhang Jun was already waiting patiently at the gate. He asked if Qin Li required any assistance, to which Qin Li politely declined his offer, saying he could manage the task by himself. As Zhang Jin saw Qin Lai carrying an armful of boxes, he asked him what they were all for. Qin Lai gave his simple reply that these were the clothes and food Qin Yin had bought him when she had first arrived in Zhangcheng. Qin Lai then realized he had forgotten his underwear, so he asked Zhang Jin to wait for him to go back inside. But Zhang Jin quickly stopped him from doing so. He said that he had already packed a lot of things. He told him to just purchase new ones in Shangjing. And so they departed to catch their scheduled flight. High up in the sky, they saw the Grand Central Tower. It was an opulent and magnificent sight. Zhang Jin took Qin Lai to a famous shopping district. After they had finally arrived in the sprawling city, Qin Lai saw the price tag on a single suit. He was completely floored by its outrageous price. The saleswoman then suggested another expensive outfit that cost even more than the first suit she showed him. Qin Lai decided to stick with the original suit. They then went to a lavish outdoor cafe for a drink. He glanced at the prices listed on the menu. He was shocked to find some food cost more than his suit. Qin Lai told Zhang Jin that the prices here were not for ordinary people like him. Jin laughed, saying this was just the start. He added that he would take him somewhere else later. Qin Lai asked him where they were going next. When night fell, they arrived at a fancy billiards bar. As they stepped inside, a provocatively dressed woman greeted Zhang Jin as she recognized his face. He asked the woman if a table was free for him and his guest. She then personally guided them to their spot. The woman carefully watched the two men grab their cues. She then secretly called a man named Ju on her phone after they had moved out of her direct sight. Meanwhile, the two men were enjoying a game of pool. As Qin Lai struck the solid white cue ball, he successfully managed to sink a perfect strike ball. Zhang Jin was genuinely surprised by his incredible skills, especially since he knew Qin Lai had never played before. But Qin simply said it was because the game was fun. Jin did not believe him since he lost 30 games. He demanded that they have a rematch. But Qin Lai told him they could play another time, as they had a birthday party to attend tomorrow. This caused Zhang Jin to let out a frustrated sigh. Qin Lai asked him what was the matter. Jin said that he was afraid to go back because of the gift for the celebration tomorrow. Lai then asked if someone had blocked his attendance, to which Jin confirmed. In the distant past, Jin's father was framed in a serious car accident, which had injured a member of a powerful family. This led to their family's complete excommunication. Even though the culprit who framed Jin's father was caught, they were never given a chance to explain the truth of the situation to the old master. Jin then begged Qin Lai to find an opportunity to see what was ailing the powerful old master. As Li agreed to help, a door suddenly burst open. A large group of people stormed into the room, led by a red-haired man who had a grudge against him. Jin recognized the man as Zhao Shuai and grew nervous. Zhao told the police director, a man named Lu, who was with him, that the two were causing trouble and damaging property. The crooked director ordered his men to arrest them both. Cheng Jin told Qin Lai to quickly leave and ask his father for help to resolve this problem. He explained that the Zhou family was targeting him. Qin Lai asked if the Zhou family was truly so powerful. Jin replied they had influence throughout all of Shangjing, despite them not being a true first-class family. Qin Lai then asked how they compared to the Su family. Jin said that even though the Zhou family was strong, they were nothing compared to the might of the Su family. He then asked why Qin Lai had mentioned the Shui family. Qin Lai reminded him he saved someone important here. Qin Lai decided to call that person to defuse the situation. Zhao Shuai laughed at his pathetic attempt to get help, thinking Qin Lai was a mere newcomer to Shangjing. As the tense night dragged on, the police and Ju waited for the person Qin had called, but the director believed they were just stalling for time, as it had already been a full half hour. Cho taunted Chang Jun, mocking him for using dirty tricks. He boasted that his powerful family feared absolutely no one, and that even the great Shu family was afraid of them. At that very moment, Tegu Xiao made his grand entrance, having overheard the arrogant man's foolish words. This revelation truly shocked Xiao, as Xiao was known as the fearsome little panther, and it was a foolish mistake to ever offend him. Xiao furiously demanded to know how his family feared him, but Sui denied it, claiming Xiao must have misheard him. She kicked him in the stomach for trying to deceive him. This caused a wave of pure terror to wash over the director. Xiao told Sui he could ignore the insults to his own family, but he could not forgive him for slandering his benefactor, the man who had saved his very life. The director, seeing this, began to regret ever doing the Xiao family any favors. Suddenly, Xiao called out for the police director, which caused him to jump in pure, unadulterated shock. Xiao told the director he should go and arrest Xiao too. This made the director begin to shiver with terror as he scrambled to find a plausible excuse. He pointed at Ju Sui, saying he had been threatened by him. This prompted Sui to call the director a traitorous dog. Xiao kicked Sui once more, telling him to hold his tongue. He then commanded all of them to leave at once. He warned this would be the only time he showed mercy. They all quickly fled the scene in utter fear. Once the chaos had finally died down, Qin Lai introduced Tegu Xiao and Zhang Jin to each other, and the three of them had a very friendly chat. Xiao asked Qinlai when he had come to Shanjing, to which Qinlai replied that he had only just arrived today. He had not been able to call him any sooner. He also expressed his deepest gratitude for his help. Su Xiao told him to stop with the formalities. He asked the reason for his trip to Shanjing. Qinlai explained that he had traveled with Zhang Jin to attend the old master's important birthday, and to also check on his strange illness. Xiao said that the old master was indeed ill, but there was much more to the story than that. The time then arrived for the Zhang family's birthday celebration for the venerated old master. Both Zhang Jin and his father came to the grand party. They made sure that their precious gift was ready. Qin Li came along with them, as Jin told him that they would enter the party. At the other side of the massive, crowded venue, an extravagant-looking member of the Zhang family was standing at the door, greeting all the visitors. He spotted Zhang Jin from across the courtyard, who was presenting a gift to the powerful family, so he arrogantly shouted out his name to him. This greatly angered Jun. The man, named Zhang Zi, arrogantly told him not to bother giving a gift, since every year he had given him low-value items. He then continued to mock and belittle him. He assumed that his gift for this year was also junk. This enraged Jin, but he could not do a thing, as Zhang Yang was the son of the family's head. The onlookers heard the loud commotion. They began to gossip about Jin's disgraced father, which just angered him even more. Qin Li interjected, telling Zhang Yang to see the gift before he began to run his mouth, but he brushed him off, assuming it was just a piece of trash. Then a well-dressed guest saw the jade that Qin Li held, so he moved in closer to get a better look at it. This action grabbed the attention of the other guests. After the man inspected the jade and knew what it was, he shouted that it was a priceless rainbow blood jade. This revelation shocked all the other guests there. This caused a swarm of people to try and buy it from him, since Zhang Yang had refused to take it earlier. Zhang Yang began to sweat after seeing the gift's value. He tried to fix the situation by telling the guests that he had only been joking with them before. He then said that the Zhang family would accept the incredible gift. This contradicted his previous harsh words. Zhang Jun asked if they were now allowed inside, to which Zhang Yang replied that they were, but only if they would leave the priceless jade there. The inside of the palace was full of traditional decor. Zhang Jin was walking around. He thought about the corruption of the Zhang family. This caused his father to hit him on the head. He warned him they would be in trouble if he was heard. They then went to go and greet the head of the family, while Qinlai chose to stay behind and wait for them. He took a seat among the crowds of talking guests. He reflected on the complex situation of the family. Here in Shanjing, he realized that each family member was a major player in their respective industries. He knew it would be hard for the family to return. Then a voice called out his name from the crowd. It was Xiao, waving at him from across the ballroom. Qinlai got up to approach him and asked why he was here. Xiao answered him that his family had a partnership with the Zhang family, so he was sent to the party with his big brother. He then took Qinlai to go and meet his siblings. They arrived in front of the powerful Exu siblings. Xiao began to introduce Qinlai to the two of them. His beautiful and elegant sister, Exu Xiao, asked if he was the doctor who saved her brother's life. Qinlai introduced himself by name, which confirmed her question. Xiao then introduced his brother, Kai Shu Kong, who looked like a high-ranking officer. Qinlai stared at him, which grabbed Kang's attention. Kong asked if there was an issue with his face, for Qinlai to be staring at him so hard. Qinlai apologized and said it was just a habit. He meant no offense by his actions. Kong then asked if he thought he also had a disease. Qinlai guessed that Kong had just returned from a mission, which Kong confirmed and told him to please continue. Qinlai explained that Kong had a serious internal wound that had caused a persistent disease, despite his otherwise healthy and strong appearance. He advised that Kong should avoid any future missions because of his current health and his condition. Qinlai's statement completely shocked both Xiao and Xiao, who asked their brother if he was truly sick. Qinlai added that if his treatment was delayed, his condition could become a permanent illness. As the bright sun shone down on the grand venue, Kong denied that he had any kind of disease. He accused Qinlai of being a liar with a foul mouth, so Qinlai decided he would say nothing more, since he knew that he was not being believed. Xiao begged his brother to let Dr. Qin see him, but Kong furiously refused his brother's request. He shouted at him to mind his own business. The true reason for his strong denial was he could not let the other families know the Shu family's secret and hidden weakness, since they were all currently under surveillance. Qinlai then told Xiao that he would leave now, since he had now finally met his family. So he tried to stop him. Qinlai asked what was wrong, so Xiao said his elder brother just had a bad temper, so he should not take his words to heart. He then assured Xiao that he was fine. He understood his brother struggled to be honest. Xiao thanked him for understanding as he left. He suspected his elder brother really did have a disease. Qinlai was now walking through the massive venue. He wondered why Johnson was taking such a long time. He was worried, but then he felt something strange. He looked to where the feeling came from and saw a dark aura was emanating from a nearby area. He went to the place where the aura came from. He was shocked to see such a thing was hidden deep inside the massive Jiang family mansion. Before he went inside, he saw that there was a dead rat by the locked door, which was sealed shut with a dark spiritual power. He peered through the window to see inside. He was shocked to see that there was a person being consumed by the dark and evil aura. So he quickly broke the lock and entered the room. He was cloaked in his own energy for protection. As he stepped foot inside the cursed room, a powerful evil spirit suddenly attacked him. He took a defensive stance and pulled out his needles. He charged them with his energy, then threw them, which made some of the dark aura vanish into the air. He realized that the aura inside the mansion felt very similar to the one at Zhang Ran's hotel, but a swarm of evil spirits interrupted his thoughts. So he recalled a lesson the old man had taught him, that every single formation has a certain weakness. He then dodged all the incoming attacks. He tried to find the weakness of the formation. After he searched for a short while, he saw a skull that emanated a lot of evil energy. He knew this was the weakness that he was looking for, so he immediately rushed over to the skull. He launched his charged needles at the evil spirits that were now surrounding him on his way. Before he was completely overwhelmed, he lunged right at the skull with a needle in hand. He pierced straight through its empty temple. Then he charged it with his spiritual energy. As a result, all of the evil spirits disappeared. Now that the threat was gone, he took a deep breath and wondered who set this up, since it had been so very skillfully constructed. He also wondered how the old man was in this trap, but luckily he found it just in the nick of time. He then began his treatment of the old man. As he pulled out a needle imbued with his energy, he pricked the old man's forehead with it. This caused the evil aura in him to dissipate. The old man then slowly began to open his eyes. He asked who the man standing before him was. As Chin Lai was relieved that he had woken up, he introduced himself as a doctor at the party, which causes the man to realize he almost died at his own party. Chin Lai then asked if he was the Zhong family head. Because of the words he had just said, the old man thought of how he was betrayed by his own himself. He asked what he had meant by that. The old man said that it was his own son's fault, that he had ended up in such a dire situation. Chin Lai then told him that Zhang Lim and his family had entrusted him with his treatment, which made the man realize all of their efforts, though he also knew they wished to return to the family in exchange for his complete and total cure, to which Chin Lai could not deny the truth. As the bright sun shone down on the beautiful palace, Chin Lai helped the old man to sit up straight. He told him that he also wanted the family back, but in his current condition, he would not have the power to sway the others. Chin Lai looked very closely at his legs. He saw that they were damaged by the evil aura, so he decided to use the Foxy Needle's third part. He then told the old man that he could help him get back his consciousness. The old man's eyes lit up with a newfound hope. He asked if he could be returned to normal, to which Li told him that he could not. This made him slump down in pure despair, since he had been looking for a cure for so long. Even the most famous doctors could do nothing. Chin Lai clarified he could not make him normal, but he could help him to be able to move again. He then asked the old man to make a bet with him, that Zhang Lim's family could return to the family. If not, he would do whatever he was ordered to. The old man was intrigued and agreed to the bet. He also added that if he wished to return the family, then he would still need to do something else. Time passed after their fateful discussion. The time had arrived for the Jiang family meeting, where all of the family branch heads would gather. The current family head, a man named Changs, was surprised to see the elder arrive there. He had even called Jiang Lim to the meeting. The old man spoke up. He told the heads that he had called them here. He announced that he had decided to bring Lim and his whole family back to the main family. Jiang Ziyang strongly opposed this idea. He asked if he had forgotten what he did, which made his father scold him for his words, for speaking so rudely to his own grandfather. He said that his grandfather would not make a mistake, like bringing those people back into the family. The other family heads also agreed with him. They said that they had no place in the family. So to confront all of their criticisms, the old man asked Zhang Lim to explain the incident from back then. Zhang Jun then began to hand out a document, as Lim asked all of them to take a close look, since it was the new evidence they had gathered on the incident. This made all of the heads in the family start to argue about the document's contents. Upon seeing what it was, Yang Xiang also read it while smiling to himself. He then told his father that, although he wanted to bring back Lim's family, the elders seemed to have their doubts about it. Chin Lan started to speak to the room. He told them there was a document he had yet to show. Xiang shouted at him for interrupting the meeting, despite him not being a part of their family. But he replied saying that he was just handing a document from Zhang Jun to the powerful head of the family. Zion seemed to be intrigued and agreed to see it. His reaction seemed to take Chin Li aback for a moment. Zion also told him that outsiders were not allowed here, and he tried to kick him out of the room, but his father stopped him. He then stood up, while saying that Dr. Chin Li was his special guest. Zion was surprised to see his father could stand up. which made his father ask him if he wanted him to be in a wheelchair forever. Zion became a bit flustered after hearing his words. He denied it, saying he was glad that he was cured. His father then whispered to him he knew what he had done, and to just look at the document without any issues. Shin Li handed him the important documents. This made Zhang incredibly and furiously enraged, after he mistakenly thought that the old man was just pretending to be sick. All this time, the old man then asked the meeting for their thoughts. After they had read Lim's important new document, Zhang smiled to himself, since he had a plan to stop his father's actions. He then told his father that it was okay for Lim and his family to return, but they also had to do something before that, which was to recruit a new martial artist for them. The old men at the meeting argued about his words. They stated it would take years to train an artist, but it would also be a great boon for their family. An old woman also stated that Lim's family was responsible for the incident, even if he had been wrongly accused of the crime. A scrawny man said a martial artist could solve it. The old man thought deeply about what they had said, since ordinary people would need a lot of talent to even reach the level of a beginner martial artist. And after that, it would take them more than 10 years of training to improve. So he asked Lim what level June had reached. Lim informed him that although June was strong, it would still take a few decades for him to become a proper and skilled martial artist. June interjected and asked his father why he was so willing to stay in the family, despite them making things so difficult for them. Chang's and his son were happy after his words. They told them that they could not blame them for not letting them come back here, since his own son had already given up. Lim also began to lose all of his hope, saying it might be impossible for them to return in this life. After the intense meeting, Zhang Lim said while he was sipping his tea that he did not expect the old master to make the condition of a martial artist even harder. So, Zhang Jun asked if there was anything they could do, besides him becoming a strong martial artist. Shin Lai heard his worried words. He wondered if the people from the serious gang were the ones that they called martial artists. So he asked if they knew of the gang. Young Jun was shocked after hearing the name of the gang. He asked how Shin Li could know about them. He calmly said that he had fought them in a bar. The news absolutely stunned both of the men. You fought the serious gang? Young Lim asked him, his voice filled with disbelief. They're all powerful martial artists. Are you alright? Shin Lai just gave a confident smile. If they had been a true problem, he stated simply, I wouldn't be standing here. Relieved, a worried Jun gently patted his head in concern. But for Jiang Lim, a stunning idea began to take form. He shot to his feet, his eyes ablaze with a realization. You fought them off? He pressed him. Does that mean that you are a martial artist? Shin Lai said he did not know what that title meant. This prompted Zhang Jun to quickly explain. He recounted what a friend of his had once told him, that martial artists were a very special class, a different breed who lived above the normal law. They are divided into a total of 9 levels. The weakest were as strong as a seasoned fighter, and the strongest, they were said to move mountains. Jun confessed that he believed his friend was lying, but the claims had been too wild to be true. He looked at Shin Lai, his voice filled with awe. Are the serious gang really like that? They are, Shin Lai confirmed, his tone now grave. Serious. They are far stronger than a normal person. A million different thoughts raced through his mind. Can you break rocks with just your hands? He asked, his voice now shaking with excitement. Shin Lai considered the question for a moment. I have not tried that yet, he replied to him, before he added, but if you truly wish to, with enough training, I'm certain it's possible. Hearing this, John Lim saw a new hope for his family. The patriarch's voice was now heavy with a purpose, as he made a very important and formal request. Shin Lai, can you please help us? Without even a single moment's hesitation,